I just come over to your apartment. So...
Oh, okay. Anyway, we're live. We're up. So welcome everybody. This is the Dominions 4 YouTuber live stream wrap up, and we've had a lot of technical problems. We're about 2 minutes behind schedule. So I guess we don't really need to introduce ourselves, do we? Or should we? I think we'll be able to do that anyway as we sort of start to go through the different discussions.
Sure.
So,
maybe we can remind people of our nations just in case. Yeah.
I think as we go through. Also, we don't actually have Dwarf Comet with us, so he was the only one that couldn't actually make it. So there's 6 of us in the chat or in the live stream, just so that people know. So we've got pretty much the various nations of everyone except for Agarthan. So that's the only nation that's actually missing.
Asphodel.
Yeah, Asphodel.
Oh, Asphodel.
Nice.
Sorry, Marcus.
That already caused one huge diplomatic kerfuffle already.
We've all got those confused at certain times in this game.
Speaking of which, let's flip the first card over, which has got our discussion points. So feel free to roll this around, guys, if you need to rotate it. I think it's just the R key if you're in Tabletop Simulator. So the first thing we're going to be talking about is diplomatic bubbles.
Diplomatic bubbles.
So, meaning that basically we were all operating, not really knowing what was going on with everybody else, and it's just interesting on the different perspectives that we all had from what was happening in the game and the misperceptions or misconceptions, I guess. So I'll let you guys sort of start the discussion off.
Well, I'll jump in since I feel like it. And for anybody who isn't clear, that I'm Wade Starr. I was playing Vanaheim. And so if anybody's watched my videos, you'll know just how, kind of how much I actually relish the diplomatic bubbles, in as much as it adds such an interesting element of the metagame. And so there was a lot of, I guess for me, the diplomatic bubbles are the best way, or the most natural way for conflict to arise in Dominions, and really in any kind of diplomatic type game. So that's what I'll start off by saying. And I may just hand that off then to either Marcus or Battle Moose, or who else do I end up fighting with? Sabouts?
Yeah.
I think everybody in the end.
Yeah.
So well, Marcus, did you want to?
Yeah, I'll kind of give a alternate take. I actually think the game, I think it would have been more interesting if there was no diplomacy. If everyone just kind of reacted to the actions of other people and couldn't collude or communicate, I think that would have led us to a very different game, possibly more aggressive.
Absolutely.
I agree with it would be a different game, but personally, I like the diplomacy.
I like the diplomacy as well. I think it, I mean, it adds a different level of interaction between everybody. And I think for the viewers, that was a big part of it too, was watching all of us not know who was actually lying, who was not.
Yeah, I'll be curious, Sabouts, with you. So you remember I told you that I was attacking you extremely reluctantly, and I wondered, did you feel that way when I was initially destroying your lands?
I mean,
did you believe me?
I felt hurt and pain, mostly. I figured I'd be out of the game very quickly. You know, actually, for the discussion points in general for diplomatic bubbles, I mean, I felt like I was so alone.
But you knew that going in.
I did, yeah. I expected that. And we had talked about that when we were all emailing back and forth. And even Wade Starr warned me. He's like, just so you know, you're not going to have any friends during this playthrough.
I was your friend.
Yeah. I had like dodgy friends who only liked me because I had nice things.
I had to do it. The other guys made me.
I knew it. I knew it all along.
One thing that I found very interesting, this is Balmus and Elm over here, is that me and Sabouts had almost no interaction the entire game. Like, at all. I almost had no idea what was going up there. And one thing that really threw me, or I had no idea about, was that secretive alliance or peace treaty between Wadestar and Sabaths, which I only learned about watching Wadestar's videos. I had no idea.
Yeah. That was because that was really confusing for the Council of the Living. I guess we should actually, for people who haven't actually seen the series, the Council of the Living sort of started off with most of the nations against Sabaths and Dwarf Comet, and so there was 5 of us versus 2, and it sort of then started to disintegrate away. And so Marcus, I think you were the first one to leave, and then Vanaheim was sort of playing all sides against each other. And it was during that time I think that you started to then make diplomatic moves with Sabaths. I think that's Wadestar and Sabaths with Vanaheim and Ermor, which ultimately then just left the Shinuyama man and Ulm together in the Council of the Living, and we sort of pretty much then stuck together throughout the game. Even though at one point I was trying to sort of get out of that, but I just it was all too late by that stage.
I want to say that I felt like the Council of the Living, the whole concept of it, was the detriment to the game, in the sense that, like you said, Das, it forced people to not play to win almost, but to play the way they were supposed to play. And what I mean by that specifically is that I felt like, rather than, if you were playing the game completely logically and every player was in it for themselves, then naturally what you would see is everyone would gang up on the strongest person, and then that person will become not the strongest, and then everyone would gang up on whoever emerged as the strongest after that. But instead, everyone ganged up on like one of the weakest, and it, I don't know. It just felt like so much of the early 2/3 of the game was taken on that path that by the time that was finally over, which is when Dwarf Comet, I guess, went AI, there wasn't much left that could be done. Like for my part, for example, I haven't even put up any of the videos from the period after that because nothing exciting happened. I just kind of turtled and recruited troops, you know?
Yeah, I don't know. For me, it was the opposite. I actually really needed to, like my survival really relied on getting strong friendships with all my neighbours. And because in the wastelands, I just didn't have any real income. So it was desperate for me to actually, like when I sort of saw that both Ermor was actually a long way away from me, and that Asphodel was really the only one that I had, a neighbouring sort of path to. For me, that was pretty much, okay, I'm going to push this Council of the Living as far as I possibly can, because it was the only chance I actually had of growing.
Yeah, I'd like to jump in at this point too. But first of all, is Tortuga here yet, or is he?
Oh yeah, I'm here. I'm just
okay.
observing.
Well, I ought to give you a chance to speak then first, because you haven't said anything yet. Do you want to jump in yet?
I mean, I can weigh in on this. I think the diplomacy was, I mean, it really depends on what you want out of the game. If you want to min-max the game, if you want to play statistically, this is my best unit to do, and I'm going to move this forward. This becomes more like PvP, which is not something I'm like a huge fan of. So I really enjoy the diplomacy because in a way, for me, it makes it more like a Dungeons and Dragons type setup where you can roleplay a lot more. And this also takes out some of the, like if I'm getting beaten in a game PvP, I'm a competitive person, so I get upset. But if I can roleplay, oh, this person's just attacking Tortuga-san, who's a fictional character who is not me. And I can kind of shift the aggression I would normally feel towards that person into like, oh, well, it's just a story. Let me write my part of the story back. So that's how I feel about it. I appreciate the diplomacy.
I think that's a good point, actually.
But to be fair, Tortuga, there was never a moment in this entire game when you weren't trying to win.
I disagree. I mean, okay, I was always trying to win, of course, but there was times when it wasn't my first priority. For example, my move to help Ulm against Asphodel was completely against the efficient gameplay move. It was just something I decided to do. I was like, okay, let's just rally the troops and go because I feel like getting involved. And I didn't think it was necessarily the smartest thing to do, but it was fun, and that's why I did it.
Also, I think with that move, that was also, we were trying to, at that stage, we were scared shitless of Vanaheim. Like, Wadestar was really, we were all so scared. And
that's another topic we'll come back to later.
Yeah, that's going to be an exciting one.
But that's really like that drove so much of our decision making was how do we keep together so that we can actually challenge him when we have to. And anyway, we'll get to that, I guess. But for me, that diplomacy was critical in that phase of it, just to keep those alliances together and to try to keep on growing. And I certainly always wanted to win. I knew that I was going to struggle because of the wastelands, and then I got locked out from really attempting anything at one point, in which case I then stopped trying to. I didn't try to side with anybody at that stage. So when I knew that I was out of the running, all I did was just try to protect thrones from whoever would actually take them. So for me, I still feel that I was true to the game. That I didn't actually it wasn't diplomacy first. It was diplomacy was an important part for me.
I think I would like to say that the diplomacy and specifically the Council of Living and specifically what Shinuyama was doing totally saved me the early game. I was looking at being knocked up real quick and soon.
Well, that's the third point actually. The third discussion point is Asphodel's Zerg rush on Ulm. So shall we start talking about that?
Before we do, I just wanted to finish up on this topic and say that what Marcus was saying is something that I think a lot of you too. So I think it's certainly a valid point, and I actually do kind of sympathize a bit with Marcus's point too, where it is a very different game if we had played without the diplomacy.
Yep.
And I think a lot of viewers share Marcus's feelings as well, and of course, it's you can't please everybody, of course. But what I guess in the end, though, I do feel like the nice thing about the diplomacy element of this game is it is a nice equalizer for some of the imbalances in that tactical element of the game. For example, Shinuyama being a generally weaker nation than the others, ended up winning this game, and a lot of it had to do with the way the game played out diplomatically. And so that's what I like about the diplomacy element of the game, is that it's just another dimension to the game. Otherwise, it's, like I said, you have the dimensions of a strategy and a war game, but when you add diplomacy to it, it suddenly adds just another dimension to the game that makes it much more rich than the single-player experience or the pure silent tactical experience, even though there are times when that two-dimensional version of the game is exactly what I want too.
Yes, yeah. I know the multiplayer game with the diplomacy is not at all like the single-player game at all, is it really? It's a completely different game.
I mean, if I can weigh in on the Council of the Living, I of course didn't get an invite, as you would imagine. So I actually almost, for like the first half of the game or a large portion of it, it was almost like playing a single player game. I had very little diplomatic communications, which is kind of interesting because I can kind of echo on that. I didn't communicate hardly with anybody at all. I think the first level of communication I did was in like, I maybe turn 2. I sent off like really insulting messages to everybody. That was about, and yeah, I was like, oh, I'm just gonna go ahead and draw the line right here and just send insulting messages to everybody, so that way everybody knows where we all stand, and then it makes it easier for me to attack people. I don't feel bad about it in the future. So that was kind of my level of thinking. But I mean, the Council of the Living, of course, was absolutely a huge thorn in my side for pretty much the entire game. Not as much near the end, because it all kind of folded and collapsed with, Vanaheim's attempt at ascension, and then, Tortuga there trying to go for it as well. It was a little bit weaker, but in the beginning of the game, it was constantly, even when it wasn't attacking me, it was always this sort of in the back of my mind, like, okay, I got to be careful when I expand. I got to be careful as I grow. Because if I do it too quickly, and if I catch people's attention, or if I attack the wrong person, I could get the whole council after me all over again. So it was a constant struggle, and in my videos I explain it over and over that there's just no way I can possibly expand in a fast enough way that's not going to draw everybody instantly to my attention.
Yeah, if I may here, I actually think that there's a whole different way we could look at the diplomacy. If instead of disabling diplomacy, we had gone with nations that were all not pop kill. Like if Airmore and Asphodel had been 2 different nations, I think that would have made it extremely interesting, because
you're right.
We wouldn't have any. There was like bullseyes on those two nations from the beginning, so alliances were formed immediately against them. And if we didn't have this like sense of security, like, oh, I know these guys are cozy because we're the Alliance of the Living. If there was everyone was the Living, then we would have had the kind of cluster foxtrot that happened towards the end of the game right from the get-go, and that might have been more interesting.
You're dead right, actually, because it was, for me, it was a no-brainer to just do everything I could to fight those two nations, which meant that I should have ended up with 5 allies or 4 other allies. So yeah, for me, it was like a very easy decision diplomatically.
I mean, something interesting to note. Sorry to cut you off. Just something interesting to note is I actually started with some of the strongest provinces on the map.
Yep.
I know. We all noticed.
Well, actually, because with Shinuyama, I was actually, because Shinuyama, you also had pretty good, like you were surrounded by reasonably good provinces that nobody could really get to as well. But Ermors really did kick off in the most lush of products. I wish we had a swap places.
Yeah. Okay,
right,
so anyway, let's go ahead.
So point 3 is, so we've talked about the diplomatic bubbles and just how we were sort of all operating inside our own little mindset, really, and that it's a lonely place. I've got to sort of say that was one thing I sort of find when you are playing the diplomatic side of Dominions in multiplayer. It is quite lonely in those diplomatic bubbles. But we've spoken about the Council of the Living. That was started by Shinuyama, actually, who sort of coined the term and sort of head off from there. We're talking about now the Asphodel Zerg rush on Ulm. So Asphodel sort of coming up the little ridge of land across the mountains and actually into the capital of Ulm.
I don't know if you guys appreciated just how bad it was.
I sent you money, so
I was so far away that I had no idea. Like,
Des, by the way,
no idea what was going on. I just heard everybody talk about how bad things were, so I was like, all right, well, it sounds like Ulm's on his way out.
Des, people are asking on your stream if you can balance the sound. You're a little bit too loud, and I think I'm going to shift all my people over to Das because we're just staring at one single map on my thing. It's not really interesting. So I don't know if you can balance it all.
So I was very hesitant to let everyone know just how terrible it was, for fear that people would just assume, oh, Elm's going to lose. Let me best take some of his provinces now while he still exists. So I was kind of trying to pretend that it wasn't quite so bad, but it was pretty bad. I think Asphodel got really lucky with Bob and Tom just getting that hero. Almost must have been right at the start, I think.
It was.
Yeah.
And yeah, Bob and Tom.
Well, for what it was worth, I was trying to get Daz to send you money too, and I was watching Daz's videos. Like, Waystar's full of BS, like sending him Ulm money and then asking me for some. It's like, well, I need money too, but I just was like, Ulm is in even worse shape. So,
I have a question. Did you ever go down to 0 income?
Who are you asking?
Ulm. Sorry.
No, I don't think so. Maybe. Okay. My capital was sieged 3 times before turn 10. I can tell you that much.
Yeah, I see it. Wow. 6, 7, and turn 10 itself.
Was I the only one that was rooting for Ulm's complete and utter destruction?
No, I was at the end.
Oh, yes.
You know, it's too bad that Dwarf Comet couldn't be here, because I think he would provide a valuable insight on an early rush strategy and how his failed, right?
Yeah.
Like,
yes.
In a lot of multiplayer games that you read about on the forums, there are certain people whose strategy immediately is to try to take out their closest neighbor using a blast strategy or something along those lines. And obviously, in this case, it didn't work out. But I would love to know kind of what his mindset was to make him choose to go that direction, and how it all worked out from his perspective.
Well, he was really fighting three nations and doing well against all 3. He destroyed one of my armies, he destroyed Ulm's armies, and he even gave Shinuyama a big run for his money. And I think it was literally only the waterborne troops of Shinuyama being able to raid that little stretch of land that sort of saved Ulm's bacon in the end.
I mean, I was in constant communication with him. As you can imagine, he was pretty much the only person that wanted to ally me. I mean, we were in constant communication, and interesting to note, and I don't even know if I mentioned this in the video, but originally I was gearing up to join him in the war, and potentially maybe expand myself using it, because I know a lot of people were distracted. I mean, Dwarf Comet is very good at the game. He strictly lost based off of, I would feel, more of a numbers thing. You know, you can only take on so many people at one time. But me getting kind of cut back in the beginning of the game, I think really helped lead to his downfall as well, because I was definitely gearing up to come join him. We were in constant communication back and forth.
Yeah, and I think too. I am not quite sure yet, because I haven't had a chance to watch Ulm's videos yet. But I think if it had been a different nation than Ulm, he might have won. He might have done it.
I disagree. Yeah. I think that once a nation starts off strong, it's basically a death blow from the beginning. I would suggest people not to rush, because all you're doing is putting an even bigger bullseye on your head. I rarely find, I mean, in most board games like Risk, anything, what it comes down to is diplomacy, right? Especially if you have a lot of players involved. So if you start off really powerful, you're just immediately painting yourself as an easy target.
Right, and that's where the diplomacy serves, I think, to counterweight that, because otherwise I do think that that's the right strategy for this game, is in the version, like in the multiplayer versions where you don't have a thick diplomacy layer or a deep one like we do, then I think absolutely taking out your opponent as quickly as possible, or like taking out your closest neighbor as quickly as possible, it tends to be the winning strategy. But obviously it didn't turn out that way here, and I think probably because of our diplomatic layer.
Well, something interesting to note too is that, you know, Dwarf Comet did win the first game that we played with when it was just 4 of us, and that had somewhat of an effect on people who watched it. You know, I mean, Das, you were there, and you know all about how, you know, his craftiness. Nobody wanted to really ally him, and it wasn't so much just because of the race he was playing. I think a lot of it was because nobody wanted to see Dwarf Comet win again. And I know that Wade Star and Dwarf Comet have this sort of vendetta against each other when it comes to Dominion's Force, so they would never ally each other unless like extreme emergency.
Were you trying, were you?
I was trying to get him to attack Agarthan, so he wouldn't have anything to do with it.
Yeah, that's
like,
funny.
If Agarthan won't break the peace treaty, if I can get Dwarf Comet to, then...
This is where I come in and say that throughout the entire game, I communicated with Dwarf Comet and occasionally Sabouts. I made a deal with all of you at the beginning that I would never break an agreement, and I stuck to that. But I still wanted to keep the communication lines open with them, just in case something happened. Like, I think if they were not pop kill nations, I would have felt very comfortable working together with them against the rest of all of you guys, because I just felt like it was really unfair how the whole 5 versus 2 mechanic.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah, that's why I think that they shouldn't have picked those nations, because those nations just, we have to band against them. If you just ally with Airmore, you're essentially shooting yourself in the head, so it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, or using me as a tool, which Vanaheim tried to do at one point in the game. But
I was trying to help you win the game at the end. just despite Shinuyama.
I mean, something interesting to note is that I actually reached out to Marcus, you know, playing as Agartha. I reached out to him and actually wrote an extremely in-detail role-playing email about why he should rise from the ashes and join me, and he politely said no. But it was extremely long. It was several paragraphs long. It was pretty in depth. I pretty much told him to break the chains and climb out of the ground. I told him that once Airmore and Airmore and Asphodel were dead, that the Council of the Living would come for him next, because he does not belong in this world. He belongs underground, and all this crazy stuff. And I felt like if I could get him to join me and Asphodel, it might have been a completely different game in terms of, because then it'd be 3 versus 5, and Dwarf Comet's pretty good at the game, and I'm not very good, but Airmore's a pretty strong nation, and I know Marcus is really good at the game, so that would have been an interesting scenario had it played out that way.
And that was one of the fears, actually, from particularly Ulm and I guess at one stage. If I go back to the diplomatic bubbles, Ulm and I felt like I was sort of probably closest to Ulm because we were similar sort of nations. I thought I'd get Vanaheim also, so I thought the three of us would be close. I thought I'd be at war with Shinuyama because they were goblins, and I thought that eventually Marcus Aurelius with Agarthan would also be an enemy. So it was sort of, wasn't sure what was going to happen. I just was hoping that everyone would just keep on going against the dead races until we had to sort of make that sort of decision. But it was, it was interesting sort of way of starting. But you're right. I think that the dead races, they came in with a bullseye on their backs right from the start. But,
that's so funny you say that, Daz, because when I discovered that we started close to one another, and you can see this if you watch my videos, the first thing I thought was, okay, Daz is going to be the one guy that I have a solid alliance with the entire game. I'm never going to ever go after him for no reason whatsoever, and we'll keep that border safe. So it's funny to hear, looking back now, that you're like, oh no, Marcus is going to betray me.
Well, not betraying you. I just thought that ultimately we'd need to, because I thought that if you could get your strong bless going, then I stood no chance. You'd be able to steamroll over the top of me.
Yeah.
And Shinuyama as well, I just sort of thought Shinuyama would be the one that, when Shinuyama sort of just started with the Council of the Living, for me that was like a big relief, because I really thought that he was possibly someone who could actually ally with Asphodel, which he didn't, which is good.
Oh, that would have been crazy if he did.
For what it's worth, if our nations had also started off in different positions, I don't think we would be having the same conversation, because I certainly didn't want to have the 5 against 2 with Ermor and Asphodel. I attacked Sabouts under protest, and that was just because I was the one who was there to attack Sabouts, unfortunately. And so, for example, if me and Man had been switched or something like that, I would have definitely have not stayed. I would not have been. I would have been neutral in the whole conflict, and it might have turned out quite a bit differently.
Yeah, actually, now that you mentioned it, everyone I attacked was actually under protest too, as a joke.
Yeah, I know. I'm not laughing.
I guess just to finish off the Asphodel Zerg Rush on Ulm, one of the things that actually really came out of this that really impacted the game massively diplomatically was that Marcus in his bubble couldn't actually see the little pass that led across the mountains, and he thought that he was being played, because ultimately when finally Asphodel was taken out of that region, they were still massively strong on the other side of the mountains, but Marcus didn't see that. And I think that from your side, Marcus, I think that you thought at that stage that Ulm was turtling and lying about how dangerous his situation was.
Yeah, well, my thought was that the threat of Asphodel and Ermor was being overblown, because I saw firsthand that Ermor was just getting handled by Vanaheim, and I didn't know anything about what was going on with Ulm, but I heard all this gnashing of teeth, from the rest of you about, oh no, Ulm's getting just trashed and Ulm's not going to last a minute. And so I believe that was the case. And then I eventually meet Ulm. Our borders cross, and I notice how large his empire is. And then I get my scouts a little further down, and I see that he doesn't even border Asphodel. And I'm just like, what is going on here? But I guess
that literally changed the turn before you did that, because I looked at those videos, actually, all of our perspectives, and you just happened to miss a really critical turn the turn before with the scout, and it just wasn't there. If you had seen what was happening on the other side, I think that it would have changed your diplomatic outlook, which would have been interesting as well. Yeah,
and I wanted to keep Ulm alive and healthy in the game, because I needed something to counterbalance what I was seeing as Shinuyama gaining a lot of power at Asphodel's expense, whereas I was getting all of Ermor's provinces, which were of no use to me, and I was only sieging Ermor too, just because I didn't want Ermor's capital province to come under control of Marcus.
Actually, that brings us up to point 4, which is the Vanaheim early expansion.
Just one more thing before we move on. I just want to say that I had absolutely no idea how much Shinuyama saved my ass. I didn't know.
He did a lot of work.
Yeah, I had no idea. Like, there were words, like a message, oh, you're fighting, but I didn't see any of it.
Are you talking about in the beginning of the game, or?
Yeah.
when you drew the army off into your territory, I think.
Oh yeah. Very noble.
Didn't have a single clue that was even happening, and all for my benefit. So thank you.
So, Battle Moose, have you actually seen the videos from Shinuyama's perspective of that period?
Yes.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? It's very interesting. So anyway, part 4, or discussion point 4 was going to be Vanaheim's early expansion. I should point out we've got about 17 different discussion points to go through. So
okay.
Oh, we better. Yeah. Okay.
No, we're doing okay. We're doing okay. Okay, so because Vanaheim, you did paint a big target on your back as well with your early expansion. You just went crazy with your with just expanding.
It's called playing the game, guys.
But so my biggest contention was that despite Daz saying that you painted a big target on yourself, nobody was willing to do anything about it. And I was like, man, Shinuyama, what's going on, you guys? Like what's are you just cool with this? Like, are you going to go to war with? I actually likened their attack against Asphodel as kind of a Don Quixote kind of tilting at windmills thing, because in my opinion, Asphodel wasn't really a threat, and they were putting so much effort into that. And I guess now's a good time to ask this question. Now that it's all said and done, and you can be honest without diplomacy, were you just simply scared of Vanaheim and just didn't want to? Were you afraid that if you did do anything, you'd lose?
From my perspective, absolutely. That's not the only reason. It was. I was at that stage, and we've been discussing that we actually thought that Agarthan and Vanaheim were pretty equal in terms of strength, and we know now that it probably really was unfair on Marcus to have put him in that position. And so the rest of us were trying our hardest to get you two to fight each other while we finished off Asphodel. And the other thing that was also driving my thing was that I knew that I couldn't beat Vanaheim, but I knew that if I could grab all of Asphodel's territory, including their capital, it would then give me the income that I needed for my strategy in the game, and which is going to be, we'll talk about that when we talk about the division of Asphodel. But that for me, grabbing Asphodel's lands was critical for my long-term survival.
And unfortunately, I think for my long-term survival, conquering you in the beginning would have been the best move. Like,
as in just marching into man.
Yeah, I got all the bad things of perhaps early expansion without the benefit of taking another capital province. If I could have taken your capital province, allying with you, I wanted to do it for the diplomatic benefits I thought there would be, but I'm not sure. Like in hindsight, maybe I should have tried to, or if I had a time machine and I could go back and redo this, I think I would have just attacked you and tried that for a change.
I think that would have been a good move, actually. Just thinking about it, that would have given you the throne of Splendor as well.
It would have given me a straighter path there, yeah. And then I would have just had to have relied on being able to hold off the rest of the guys. And, as we saw later in the game, just with the way Shinuyama was able to pump... well, I'm not sure how much money in the end Shinuyama gave Ulm, but it certainly kept me and Marcus from being able to take out Ulm completely, because
thousands, by the way.
Thousands,
it was probably like 3,000 all told.
Oh my god!
Yeah, because I was trying my best to bankrupt Ulm's horrible army. And
you gave me a lot of gold too.
I gave you some earlier in the game when I gave you what I could afford to try to keep you going, but not like what Shinuyama did there at the end, especially when it counted. When, like I said, my strategy there was to try to bankrupt your army so that Marcus would have an easier time facing you in a pitched battle. But anyway, my only point there is that the drawback of expanding so quickly and so big is counterbalanced by the fact that if you can get enough income going, you can just, you can deal with all comers.
Yeah, and you kept on asking for different things, and I kept on trying to find ways of saying no.
Yeah, I picked that up pretty easily.
Oh, did you? I wasn't sure because I thought, oh, geez, how do I keep hold of all this stuff that he wants? Because I don't want to give it to you, but I also don't want to piss you off.
Yeah, I was not happy seeing all the temples you built, but I was also misunderstanding that I thought you were building these 400 gold temples, and that was like, why can't he spare 200 for Ulm? But I didn't realize that your temples only cost 200 gold.
I only ended up building 3 or 4, I think, so I didn't have too many. But
on the topic of money, my start position was very thematic for Agartha, being in the middle of the mountains, but it was just absolutely horrible for my budget. I never had a good amount of money throughout the game, and that's one of the reasons why in the end I just kind of turtled and petered out, because I never had enough money to even troop raise it, build temples or do anything like that.
Oh, that's better. Yep. Yeah. Yep. No,
yeah,
I sympathize with you.
but honestly, and this was my fear with Agartha, and why I was trying to get Ulm to help me go after him, because I didn't feel like I could take him toe to toe, was just that still, Marcus, even churtling like that, I think ignoring the 50 turn limit, which I don't think any of us quite knew how that was going to pan out in terms of where our nations would be by turn 50. But it was still a pretty good strategy, because you just avoided losing troops, and you were site searching, and you could build your troops with gems. So, I mean, I don't think it was really necessarily a bad strategy on your part. I mean, your nation just was going to get stronger and stronger the longer we went.
A lot of guys in the forums, in my channel comments, were like, "Yeah, Agartha's all about maximizing the gems and going with the summons." But that's another problem I had, though, is I had no earth gems. Like, despite being all mountainous, my earth gem income was actually really bad throughout the entire game. I did have quite a bit of fire gems, which is why you saw a ton of magma children. But my intention, the strategy that I wanted to pursue, involved having a ton of sentinels. And those, well, first off, the fact that you only get one at a time really killed me. And that's another reason why I switched over to magma children, where you got several at a time, but also just the lack of earth gems in general.
Even so, all the sentinels that you were able to generate, just the ones that you had in that game alone, in my opinion, were enough to destroy me. I know you guys were all worried about how strong I was and wanted me to go toe-to-toe to Agartha, and I was just really fortunate that you actually made a truce with me later, because I had nothing to counterbalance those terrible sentinels.
Well, you guys probably don't realize how hard we were trying to get you. We were doing everything we could.
The truce was good for both of us, because yes, I had huge stacks that were bearing down on your lands, but at the same time you had raiding parties in my lands that I couldn't combat. So, one turn one of my provinces would fall, and the next turn I'd take it back, but you'd be able to take another one, and that could have gone on forever. So, I mean, neither one of us were really. That's the reason why, by the way, we did the truce, is because I saw where it was going, and I'm like, okay, well, Vanaheim, this isn't getting you closer to victory. Like, you fighting with me is not helping you, and me fighting with you is not helping me. So why are we doing this?
Well, that's where Ulm kind of played me against you. So I'll let him talk about that. I was trying to get you and me and Ulm. I was trying to get Ulm to help me fight against you, because my position was like, I would rather deal with Ulm in the late game than you. And so, yeah, my reason for doing the ceasefire with you was that I felt like I was, after kicking the hornet's nest by raiding you, that without Ulm to come up and also punch you there on your fronts, that I was on my way out very quickly. So I was, like I said, I was very, I considered it a very great windfall when you decided to declare a ceasefire with me. And then I decided, since Ulm isn't going to help me against you, I had to completely change my strategy at that point. But we'll talk about that later, I guess.
Okay, do you want to go to the next discussion point?
Let's do it.
Flip it over. Okay, so point 5 was fear of supposed Agarthan strength and the shard guards.
Yeah. Which I thought they were terrifying.
Totally a surprise to me.
Those shard guards were very strong. I just happened to have the right tools to counter them.
because that was a lot of discussion, a lot of even amongst in my Patreon area, there was people were really quite scared of the future Agarthan strength, and yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting.
I just they're so limited in recruitment. I could only get like 6 of them a turn, only from my capital. There was just you saw how I protected them because they were so valuable to me. I don't think I could have ever massed them to the degree that it would have been a game changer.
But how much was that? Yeah, sorry. How much was the Throne of Splendor a target for you? Like if you had have got that, what would that have done with your shard guards?
Well, they would have been. Shoot, I'm forgetting the name of it, but they would have been.
They would have had awe.
They would have had awe. But that wasn't really. I mean, you have to understand when you basically said, if you take Throne of Splendor, we're going to war. At that point, early in the game, I gave up on the Throne of Splendor. Like I had no intentions of ever taking it.
Geez, I would have thought it must have still been a tempting target to grab that.
Yeah, and I still think you probably should have, Marcus. I mean, God, because awe is just such a great ability, especially considering who your name. Ermor, of course, it wouldn't have mattered at all. But
well, it didn't matter against Ulm either, because awe does not protect you from
flying projectiles.
Yeah, blizzard storm, whatever it's called.
Yeah, neither does glamour, unfortunately.
Yeah, we got that on the discussion points. So yeah, because the fear of the Agarthan strength, that was certainly something that was driving the Shinuyama, Alm, and myself to try to keep Agartha and Vanaheim at each other's necks. That was a big fear, and it was sort of funny because Agartha was asking us to gang up on Vanaheim at that stage, and we were all thinking, you do it first because you're the one with the hidden strength, you know. So it was very tense, very funny. It was that was quite interesting.
Oh, interesting.
But, you know, had you guys agreed, had you said, okay, Marcus, we'll work with you, I would have gone after Vanaheim with everything. Like,
the trouble
I was playing this game honestly, and none of you guys, I guess, gave me the credit for that. Because if you'd allied with me, I would have been your ally till the end.
What our fear was that you were just as strong as Vanaheim. And that was what our fear was. So our fear was if we choose one over the other, that person wins the game. And we didn't want that. So we thought the best outcome for all of us. And at this stage, Shinuyama is sort of secretly growing stronger and stronger. But really, we sort of thought at that stage, Agartha and Vanaheim were the two powers in the game. And we needed them to be fighting each other. Otherwise, you know, it's whoever wins. If we help one of them to win, then they're going to win the game. That was actually the underlying fear.
I mean, shoulda, woulda, coulda, but if I had more income and immediate access to water, I think I could have done better in this game. But I didn't have either of those things, and that caused me to become a lot more defensive than maybe I would have otherwise been.
Das, do we have eventually on the talking point list how random starts play out, or should we talk about that now?
I'll talk about it now. I think I can't remember if it's on the list. I just copy-pasted them into the cards, so it's been a while since we discussed them.
I already broached the topic earlier, so go ahead, Tortuga.
Yeah, I think that's one almost grievance I have with the game, and I don't know how it can even be solved because, I mean, I don't know how, if maybe there's like a system where everybody picks their capital in succession, you roll a dice and everyone gets to pick where they go. Because I feel like the random starts almost like even with diplomacy were like too strong. For example, I think Man never had a real fair chance at this game just because of his start, which is kind of a real shame. I feel like if that random element was taken out and more like gameplay experience or something was introduced into actual who wins, it would be a more interesting game.
I was so pissed off when I saw my start. I can't tell you. I actually did 6 different 1.5 year starts of the game testing Man before I started, and every single time I was in great locations except the actual game itself.
Oh no!
I was seeing how quickly I could build multiple castles, all sorts of things that I would need to do to play Man effectively. And when I had that Wasteland start, it was like crap. You know, like I ended up building 2 castles, but I had 2 castles by the end of I think 13 or 14 months in the when I was testing every other playthrough.
Well, one thing I want to say too is I'm hoping for our next game, we might be able to get you to work on maybe a custom map, and then if we can do that, even if we don't do that, if we can edit the maps, we might be able to limit what the random starting positions are. So I'm hoping we can kind of finesse the next game, since we're going to be taking a rather long hiatus. And,
that's a good idea. Yeah, that's a
someone
great
in
idea.
chat mentioned that there's maps with fixed starts. I don't know if that would be helpful.
No, that's what I think we ought to try to look into next time. Is you know, even if
You've dropped out there, Wade.
map file starts.
Good point. Good point.
Yeah, so the other starts, I think that Ermor really did start in the in an incredibly rich location, which sort of was also not really it's not really helpful for Ermor to be in that position, is it?
Well, it didn't hurt him. Yeah, it was helpful in the sense that it prevented any of us from getting those high-income farmland provinces.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
Actually,
I mean,
he destroyed them.
I was happy to completely ravage them and break them down to, you know, pretty much nothing but barren wastelands in front of all your eyes. It was kind of a sort of a relaxing thing for me, because I knew if I was going to go out of the game, at least nobody was ever going to get the nice provinces on the map at that point.
Yeah.
So that brought a lot of
noticed.
comfort. Brought a lot of comfort, and I think I even made that comment in the video. I'm like, you know what? These guys are going to destroy me and wipe me out, but at least they're going to get nothing out of it. And that helped me sleep at night. You know, interesting enough, since we were talking about the fear of supposed Agarthan's strength, me and Agartha sort of have had a little bit of a truce near the beginning, and I did trust Marcus's his essential stance on basically, he initially emailed me. He's basically like, I'm never going to lie to you. And I was like, okay, well, I could trust that then. Let's just have a truce right off the bat and not even worry about each other, especially because I think at the time I was fighting Vanaheim, who was expanding like just ridiculously fast. So it was nice to have that. It was actually really the only border that I definitely knew I was going to be safe in. So I didn't even worry about station troops down there unless I was maybe putting them down there because I expected Vanaheim to expand. What I thought was really interesting is that Marcus was very kind enough to send me an email saying that, hey, just a heads up, I'm going to start taking your provinces because I don't want Vanaheim to have them, which really hurt my feelings, Marcus.
Oh. Actually, it's
I didn't want your provinces either.
I actually got that email as I was at work, and I remember reading it and being like, oh.
Did you get my email?
The Lich King's heart.
Which email?
The one where I said I'm going to be attacking your provinces now. And I'm going to about it.
Yeah. Actually, interestingly enough, I got a lot of those emails.
Tortuga.
I sent one to you too.
I sent
one to everyone.
I got a lot of those
emails.
emails.
Any such email to me.
It must all got caught in drafts.
In the beginning of the game, I think I got an email from everybody that basically said, "Sorry, but I'm gonna attack you." It was like the whole. I was just like, "Well, the world's declared war on me, and it's turn 2."
I never attacked you once.
That's true.
Actually, we never came to blows either, did we, Sabouts?
We never did.
But I did declare war on you turn 1. I think it was.
It was more of like you were like fueling the war with, you were like running guns to Vanaheim or something.
No, it's just at that stage I just wanted everyone to be right out open for the undead nations. It was the only thing I could do.
Yeah, I really did feel terrible. Like, I did not want to attack Sabouts, but I mean, from a purely survival perspective, I knew that those provinces were on my border. They were good income provinces, and I'm like, I have to build some distance between my capital, and so I felt really bad. I bet you Sabouts could tell, like just the way I wrote that email. I was like, I am so sorry. This is the last thing I want to do, but it's just I expect that you're not going to be around very much longer, and I got to grab what I can.
You put a lot of sad face emojis in it. I think I remember. No, but I could read it in the email. I could understand that you didn't want to do it, but that's why I think I guess we'll probably get down on that with the whole what happened later on between me and Vanaheim when he went for my capital. But I just I figured you were going to take them, and it seemed like a good. I think I even mentioned in the video that I was like, well, it makes sense for Marcus to do this, and I can understand why he's doing it. But yeah.
All right, the next bit, we've sort of already discussed this a little bit, but Asphodel's march into Shinuyama, where he basically then turned away from Ulm. We've sort of discussed a little bit about the fallout where at that stage, Marcus Aurelius hadn't seen that change, and so had assumed something different diplomatically. But for the Council of the Living, actually, that was an interesting one as well, because from what I sort of saw of Shinuyama's or Tortuga's videos, that he really thought that the rest of us were playing him, and we're just letting Asphodel have a crack at him, and we were just turtling.
Well, I didn't get a whole lot of support at that moment, and I remember that we had this just infamous dance to see whose army would go down the peninsula to Asphodel, who had left the capital completely barren. And I'm over here in my, well, this is how I viewed it. I mean, I'm over in my capital trying to defend it against Asphodel's huge army. And then Ulm's like, okay, I'm going to go this turn. And then Man was like, wait, actually, I'll go. And then he's like, okay, well, you go ahead. And then 2 more turns pass. Well, you know what? I can't go. Ulm, why don't you go? Okay, Ulm. And then Ulm's like, okay, I'll go. And then Ulm's like, no, I can't go. And it was like 7 turns where nobody would just step up and go after Asphodel's capital. So it was
I was frustrated by that too, to be honest. It just because, but it made sense for Ulm to go first because Ulm had the bigger army at that stage, and I knew that if I sent my army down, it was going to be killed. So for me, it was like it was just a time waster, which ultimately it ended up being anyway. But it was when we were sort of deciding that, it was when Ulm finally got ready. I'd already sort of started, and then I had to go back. So yeah, it would have been very frustrating from Tortuga's perspective.
I really wanted to go down, and I think I made it to 61 or maybe 72. I'm not quite sure how far it was, but then Marcus took Might March.
That's right. That's
right. That's right. That's
right. Point. Yeah.
That was massive. And then we had to go back again.
So my part too, I didn't want to see Asphodel get kicked out of the game unless I wanted to see Daz go in and take Asphodel because I was still considering Daz to be my closest. Well, I need Daz to help me out here in the late game eventually. So I was doing everything I could to talk Ulm out of going into Asphodel. But I think he ignored me. But Tortuga, if it makes you feel better, I was trying to keep Ulm from doing exactly what you wanted him to do.
Well, I don't know. In hindsight, do we think, I didn't look at Dwarf Comet's videos. Did he have anything which could have opposed even your maybe slightly weaker army at that time, Man? Or Des?
Definitely my army. My army was really, really weak. I just couldn't build up anything. I had an army down the south, and I also had another army that I was just trying to expand with in other areas. And my bigger army was in the south, but it was so weak. I was pretending it was stronger, but it really was such a weak army.
But I haven't seen his. I thought that he put everything. I mean, the main thing with him, his army was the Black Centaurs, and I thought that he didn't even have a single Black Centaur left in his army when he moved into my territory, which I don't know.
He had about 5, and then he was building them up from there. So from what I can see anyway. So the big army that was attacking Shinuyama certainly had the majority. I think it had 20-something.
Oh, yeah, 30, I think, something like that.
Something like that, yep. And but I knew that if I went after his capital, I wouldn't actually be able to take his capital. I'd be able to get down to 48, I think it is on the map, but no further. And so when Ulm said he'd do it, it was like, okay, well, it makes more sense for you to take it. But then that's right, with Might Marsh being taken, that turn that he got to start to head down, he then had to turn back, which then we delayed us a couple more turns before I could then switch back in. By that stage, I had reinforced my army, but not strong enough.
And the whole thing ended up working out well for me because with the delay, I ended up taking Asphodel's capital, which I never even wanted to begin with. I just wanted to get Asphodel done with. But eventually it was like, okay, well, if nobody else is going to do this, I guess I'll go do it myself.
Yeah, we do talk about that actually coming up. So maybe we'll talk about the fallout from that. The next thing we had was the war that never happened, the Agarthan versus Vanaheim. Now, we've sort of covered that a little bit. Does anyone else have anything they wanted to add about that war or the non-war?
If Ulm had just shown up to fight, it would have happened.
So I think we could say that me and Wade still had this convoluted and detailed plan for us to both attack Agartha. And I was playing along, and I was trying to get Vanaheim and Agartha to fight each other, and I was like, yeah, I'll help. And Vanaheim went in, and then I didn't help at all.
I know you did it right. It would have worked if Marcus had not. I don't know. We should let Marcus talk about that. Like, why did you not just go in and smash me to pieces there, Marcus? Because Ulm got me to attack you, and then you had Casus Belli there against me.
This period of the game was my worst period in terms of gameplay. I made so many mistakes that crippled me. First off, I underestimated the amount of time it would take to build a fort. I was building a fort at the throne here, the brass throne. Oh, yeah. And I left my army there because I was convinced that the fort would be built before Ulm's troops could attack. And it turns out that the way the game is resolved, forts don't get built until after battles are resolved. So I left my army with a lot of my priceless shard guard there, and Ulm just trashed him because there was a very small army. I never expected that I could actually defeat him, but I figured if there was a wall there, he'd have to hang out for a few turns while my reserve army came in to take him. So at that point, once with the fall of the brass throne, I just basically came to the realization that I needed to consolidate. I mean, at that point, my aggression had been defeated by my own failures.
What really should have happened was, I think me and Agartha should have teamed up against Vanaheim, actually. I think that would have been the right move.
And to be fair, the only person in this entire game that I ever attacked was Sabouts.
Nice.
I never initiated conflict with any other human player.
That's kind of... Well, the Might Marsh thing, I think, is a little bit controversial because it is inside his capital circle, which from what I've heard from other players who are veterans, not for me, I don't know, but they say that the capital circle is kind of like this sacred, if you move into someone's capital circle, you're being provocative.
Well, in my expectation at that time, Ulm was done. Like, I thought Ulm was on the ropes. Asphodel was destroying him, and I saw that Might Marsh was taken by independence. So obviously the realization I had was, look, he can't even control his own cap circle. If I don't take these lands, someone else is going to.
That's the diplomatic bubble again, because Ulm was having all his forces go against the. At that stage, he was trying to get down that little bridge of land down towards Asphodel's capital. So he wasn't focused on the back area. So it's really funny to actually think about this again, because it changed so much. That attack on Might Marsh really changed the whole structure of the way that Asphodel's lands were split up ultimately.
And honestly, in the long run, it didn't benefit me. Like, I didn't really get much out of it. The reason I grabbed it was because I think it was a farmland province. Like, it was worth some money, and I needed money desperately. And I just figured, look, if he can't even hold on to it right next to his capital, then it's up for grabs. And that was a bad move, because what I did not know was that he did have a huge army. He was just moving it against Asphodel. Yep.
Okay, so that's the war that never happened, I guess, Agartha versus Vanaheim, and ultimately it ended up with Agartha versus Ulm and Vanaheim versus everyone else, I guess, really. And so now we've got the destruction of Asphodel, and this is where Shinuyama really felt that he'd actually fought the whole war against single-handedly against Asphodel. And that Ulm and I, as man, were sort of, as you say, I think that you mentioned dance cards or something in one of your videos. I thought I laughed and laughed when I saw that.
What was it? Musical chairs?
Musical chairs, that's it, yeah. Because we just...
I felt really bad watching Shinuyama's videos and complaining about this peninsula towards Asphodel's capital.
Yeah, I was just thinking, because I think we all felt we wanted to get there. And but I think from Shinuyama's perspective, he just felt that both of us were just wasting time and not realizing that we.
Well, we were playing an online game, so I mean, everything we were doing was kind of a waste of time.
Take that back.
And so, with the destruction, I mean, certainly Shinuyama did the lion's share there, but you didn't lose that many forces in the actual destruction of it, did you?
No, I don't think so, because I won the big battle the one that would have really crippled me is if I didn't win the big battle in my nation. And I happened to catch Dwarf Comet with my entire army. I mean, that was a whole cat and mouse game, which was pretty exciting itself. It turned out well for me.
And I'll speak for Dwarf Comet at this point. I mean, he can correct us, or he can correct me if I'm wrong. I think by the time he was plundering your provinces, he felt like he was probably on the way out, the same way I did later in the game. So, yeah, I think he felt like he was. I think he was making a very desperate move going against you.
Well, I do say I really regret taking him out. I mean, not from a gameplay perspective, but my only interaction with Dwarf Comet was like a couple messages in the first 10 turns of the game, and then me just like from his perspective, he probably saw me just gunning for him. Like, it's just all I did was try to kill him. And he even wrote a message of the first turn that I did some kind of aggression, like, "Oh, I see how it is," you know, like the betrayal, the hints of betrayal were there, and I felt bad about that. It's too bad he couldn't join. I even like want to play a game with him outside, like any other game that we could just.
I'm working on him.
Just bury the hatchet here because I feel really bad.
Oh no, he's totally cool. He's totally cool. I still talk to him. He's showing glimmers of interest in potentially a Dom 5 game, but he'll definitely play 1v1 if you want to hit him up for it.
Anything. I mean, this is where this game I feel like is almost perfect to play as a real board game. If we were all in a circle around some like table joking with each other, I don't think there'd be any hard feelings and stuff. And I think a lot of the diplomacy, well, it'd have to be out in the open, which would be a downside, obviously, but at least there would be I don't think there'd be any bad intentions, because the perspective I have is that every one of the people in this group is a pretty good person. So,
well, I agree with
Wadestar and I did a separate thing. He joined me for an episode of my series on Starbound, and that really actually played a huge role in burying the hatchet between us. In fact, our truce happened right after that.
Well, I was totally open to the truce by the time you contacted me. Yeah. So
what about if Asphodel hadn't have gone into Shinuyama's lands? If they had have stayed on 61 and defended that and built a castle there, what would have happened?
Well, Shinuyama had amphibious troops, so that wouldn't have stopped him.
But he would have kept his troops that fought very, very well in the forests. Along that line of forests, so that would have been easy for him to defend. He would have opened up the areas for into where Ermor was, I guess, and possibly down into Agarthan ultimately. So it would have given him. Sorry, what's that?
Oh, I was going to say, I'll speculate that if he tried to build a fortress there, that would have 600 to 1,000 not have had to defend with. So he may have.
Even just stopping there, because like when he was starting to march, I had an army ready to strike in man to just try to sort of clean up after him, which I did do. But I always thought that he'd double back at some point to defend his home provinces.
Well, he may have just been trying to punish you guys for ganging up on him too. He may have felt like he was going to lose the game, whether he turtled or whether he was aggressive. So that may have been why he went aggressive.
Yeah, I'm not sure. It'd be interesting. I'd love to know what his thought process was during that period.
Yeah.
Well, we'll have to hit him up and get him to comment later.
Yeah. Really hard to speculate on what his what he was thinking there.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
DC, if you watch this, make sure and leave a comment, okay?
Okay. So should we move on to the next? The next part is the division of Asphodel. And this, I guess, really is where Ulm decided that they didn't really care about having any of the lands from Asphodel. They didn't want to have it. I desperately wanted Asphodel's home province, and Shinuyama wouldn't give it to me.
I wanted you to have it too.
Well, I mean, can we talk about the fact that I had to watch as the only person that actually cared about me in the game was completely torn apart by all the other. As I sat there and watched him just get ripped alive. I mean, the last email he sent me basically was probably the saddest email I've ever received in my life. Oh. right next to Marcus's email when he attacked me, but it was like he was basically like, I'm
not going to be in this world much longer. You really should try and do what you can. And because he knew that I was going to be by myself after that. And I really was trying to get a force together to come help him, but I was completely in the dark at the most part on who was at war with who. And at this point, I had the assumption that it was pretty much everybody against him because I didn't know of any of the other conflicts going on. And I couldn't, Vanaheim, I think, was trying to feed me a little bit of information on what was going on, but I figured he was just completely lying to me the whole time. And I still think that he lied to me.
A very honest person.
So when the division of Asphodel came, I did want to try to make a grab, actually, and I did start pushing forces towards his lands in an attempt to grab up some of his provinces, because he basically told me in an email, he's like, you should start moving towards my provinces now because I'm going to go AI soon and you need to grab up as much as you can or you're going to be in trouble. So I started making moves towards that, but it was tough because I had Vanaheim right on top of me, and Tortuga then started kind of sending me death threats through emails, essentially. Basically,
I did no such thing.
Basically, he was just. He basically.
That had nothing to do with the game, though. Did it?
I got.
Those were real death threats.
I got an email, and I believe, if I remember this correctly, it basically said, "Well, it said something along the lines of, hey, I don't really have any reason to attack you, and so you have no thrones or anything, but I just want you to know that Asphodel's territories are mine." So,
yeah.
You remember that email? Basically, just telling me that not to make any moves, and I think I maybe got like 1 or 2 provinces before I hit a pretty big wall at that point.
Well, that's how I felt. I mean, the fact that I did all this work, I feel like I really did most of the work killing Asphodel, with a lot of credit to Ulm, obviously, for withstanding the initial push, but when I saw the Southern Throne, I was like, you know what? I didn't even consider that throne as a possibility. The one just north of Agartha, just west of, it's on the top of the map, Das, I think.
Oh, hang on.
Yeah.
Here, the Throne of Winter?
That's it, the Winter one, yeah.
Yep.
So I didn't even consider this throne initially, but then I saw that it was Asphodel's territory, and they had all but wiped out at that point. And then I went gunning for it, and I saw Sabouts moving a huge Airmore army over, and it was like, nope, that's mine. That's mine. So that's that email.
That would have been interesting, actually, was that race for that throne. I think that came a little bit later in the game, but we were both actually, as soon as Asphodel emailed me and said, I'm going AI, both me, and I don't think a lot of people knew that, but as Tortuga was gunning towards Asphodel's territory, I was actually down there as well, trying to gobble up as much as I could. And it was interesting because we almost had this sort of Cold War between us where there was extremely hostile tensions between me and Tortuga as we were dividing what little bit of Asphodel was left. But we never really attacked each other, and we kept sending threats to each other on don't take this, but then somebody would take it, and then, oh, well, you better not take this, but then I would take it. And but nobody actually made a power move, which was interesting.
So that whole thing played out so much differently from my perspective. I honestly wasn't trying to be aggressive towards you, at least in the messages. Like, I had in mind, I was like, okay, eventually we're gonna have to deal with Airmore, but I didn't think the time was right yet. So I actually didn't, like, when you started taking my sea provinces, I was like, okay, that's it though. And then you took another one. I was like, okay, you're really towing the line here, buddy. So I didn't want to go to war with you until I was like, the moment was right. And I think we talked about, somebody, I think Marcus was asking why we didn't go to war with Vanaheim when he said so. And that's the same answer. It wasn't the right time for me. I was waiting for the right opportunity, and that it wasn't that at that point.
My plan at that stage, actually, with Asphodel, because I don't know if people have sort of watched the different videos from both Tortuga and myself, but I desperately wanted the Asphodel throne, or the castle, because that would then open up me to be able to then fight against Airmore, and that's something I really wanted to be doing in my game. But by being blocked at 45, it meant that I just couldn't break through anywhere. And so I stayed there with an army for so long, trying to negotiate with Tortuga to actually take that, to get that province, and even demanded money, I think, in the end. And I don't think you paid me for it.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Yeah,
and you gave
I tried demanding money
$3,000
from Tortuga once too.
What'd you say?
I tried demanding money as well. It didn't work out.
Yeah. Well, the thing with the Asphodel, with the capital, our discussion between Man and I is what I saw from Man is that the only thing that happened is Asphodel went into your territory, defeated one of your armies. You came back and you countered and you defeated that army, and then you just pushed up to 48 by the merit that there was no army opposing anymore. That I had already defeated the other army. So.
Yeah, see, from my perspective, I'd lost 2 armies by that stage. My forces were completely decimated by Asphodel, and I was building armies as fast as I could. So for the reason I thought I deserved it was because I'd thrown my actual blood at Asphodel, whereas you actually hadn't suffered any real losses. And I thought, okay, I deserve that.
It's funny because my advisor, and I seen you before, he was saying, don't even give him 48. Just don't give him anything on a peninsula. We earned it, so we take it. I was like, no. Just
I feel that I did earn Asphodel's home province. I would have paid for it, but I did feel that I did earn it through blood, not through being effective in any sense.
Yeah, I see. So it's really one of those, do you reward somebody for trying, or do you reward the results? And I was kind of results-oriented, where you were hoping more for effort-oriented. Well,
you also didn't know what was, like, from your perspective at that stage, looking at your videos, you thought that I was just letting you do all the work on purpose, which was...
Yeah, probably I thought the worst to do that several times in the series.
Well, Tortuga, you made the right decision not giving it to him.
Yeah, actually, if I had had it, I would have actually then attacked. If I had have got it, I would have actually turned and attacked Shinuyama, because I just couldn't get through there by that stage. So at the end of the game, really, the only target I had left was Vanaheim. But at that stage, I think if I had have got the Asphodel thing, I would have been much more open to negotiation to then go after Shinuyama earlier.
It's funny because I had you pegged as a bit of a more underhanded player, and you're continuing to reveal that here. But
oh my goodness!
For example, Marcus. Every agreement that he said, I knew I could believe 100%, and then everyone else to varying degrees. I felt like Vanaheim was trying to be not disruptive. Maybe I was giving him maybe more credit than he deserved. I don't know, but then I always had this idea that Das, I've seen his videos. I know him. He could be underhanded, maybe.
Yeah, no, if the opportunity had been there, I said, and particularly once my, even in the storyline, like with the diplomacy, when my bishops started getting killed off, the prophets, etc. Then that for me in the RP version of the game is something where you have a different faction take over and they decide something completely different. So yeah, certainly I could have easily changed the storyline to make it suit myself.
I felt so frustrated throughout the game by how seriously Daz was taking the role play. I was like, what is he doing?
I can echo that.
I was doing a bit of role play myself though, so I don't know if it came out as much through the diplomacy, but it probably should have, because I was writing every email in a in a role-played sense.
Well, that was different, because you were role-playing in the sense that when you sent us emails, you were Tortuga-san and you were using the language and whatnot. But what I mean by Daz was literally playing the game in a role-play sense. Like he wasn't. It was almost like he wasn't playing the same game the rest of us were. Like a computer game where you're just trying to win. He literally was. Man, and he was thinking, okay, well, what would man do in this instance? Like, what would make sense for them to do?
No, I disagree with that. I'll have to. I had to, because of my start, I had to get friends, and so I had to be consistent with friends. And so the undead were the targets, which made it very easy for me to role play that. So if it came across that way, it was because pretty much at the hand I was dealt. If I had have started off, for example, where Ermor was, I still would have gone after Asphodel, but It's still, yeah. No, I certainly would have switched, and I would have switched if the opportunity gave itself up. Like if I had gotten that province, I certainly would have changed my role play to suit the game. So the role play didn't dictate the decisions I made. The role play was to supplement the diplomacy that I was playing, but the diplomacy was there because I had such a crappy start with the money. So I just needed, I knew I was a long way behind in terms of development. Like when I saw the first of Shinuyama's forces using their flaming arrows, which I'd been just working my bum off trying to research, I found it so frustrating seeing how early he, and I'm thinking, oh my God, he's already there. I'm still, 2 full research areas away from that. So the role play for me was actually more of a survival mechanism.
Yeah, when I saw the flaming arrows, I knew the writing was.
Yeah. Okay, so that's a division of Asphodel. We've now got Ermor on its knees. So at that stage, Vanaheim pretty much has switched across and is attacking Ermor a lot, and ends up actually getting into the home province of Ermor.
Yeah, I had every province.
Yeah,
it was Ermor's.
He had me all the way pushed back to my capital. I mean, when the war first broke out, he shot me an email essentially saying, "I'm declaring war on you," and that's kind of where it started. I wasn't in a very good position. I wasn't playing the game very well to begin with. My head was not in the game very well, and I was really struggling to kind of learn how Ermor plays. Aside from a few practice games, I just was not very familiar. They have a very unique play style compared to the other nations. And I completely underestimated the strength of my forces against Vanaheim's forces. So I wasn't sure what Vanaheim was going to bring to the table when he attacked my first army, and I realized how completely weak I was with his, his cavalry with, what was it, Glamour, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
yep.
It was just absolutely crushing. My skeletons had absolutely no chance. So the first thing I did is I drew all my forces back to the capital, because at that point he had already wiped out 2 of my armies, and I was like, well, I'm gonna go to the capital, and I already was pretty much bidding myself out of the game. I was like, oh, definitely not gonna win this, but I'm gonna go down. And I even told everybody who was watching, I said, I'm not gonna quit. I'm not gonna turn over to the AI. I'm gonna go down, throwing punches and kicking as much as I can, and really make Vanaheim have to work for that victory. So I just drew everything that was left over onto my capital. And that's, from my point of view, that's kind of how it went down. What about you, Vanaheim? What were you thinking when you were taking a lot of my provinces?
I was thinking, well, everybody keeps talking about how many provinces I have without feeling sorry for my anemic income. And I was like, this is just making it worse. Because I look big on paper, but I've got no income. And in the meantime, Shinuyama is taking out Asphodel and getting their lucrative provinces. And I was thinking, well, but I can't let Agarthan take over Ermor because of your huge gem income of death gems. And I also was thinking, well, at least if I can get rid of Ermor, finally maybe man will start attacking my enemies. And yeah, that was very, like, when you broke that siege as well, I was still kind of dancing around with some of my units. So I actually had sieged you with a pretty big army, but then I started starving. So I had to kind of spread out, and then I was getting things back in together. And at that one turn, though, like that turn when you broke siege, I was thinking to myself, I don't want to leave completely, or else I'll lose all the progress I've made on the siege. But I was also like, and I bet Sabouts won't break the siege. And I was like, yeah, but if he does, I'm screwed. And I almost moved all my troops out that turn just to wait until I could consolidate everybody back in there again. And yeah, and then you did what I was so worried about you doing, and that was you broke the siege and killed a huge part of my army. And yeah. I was just like,
massive battle.
Yeah, and at that point I was just like, okay, I'm this war against Ermor is not. This is it. I can't do it.
I mean, it's interesting to hear it from your point of view. I actually am somewhat surprised, because I had pretty much guessed exactly what you just said was going on. I mean, as I was talking it through, I was like, well, I know that he's definitely probably hurting for supplies because my provinces just do not cater to his army. I figured you had to split your army up among different provinces, and what I had assumed is that you were going to be moving armies back and forth, kind of trying to maintain them, but still keep the siege going in some way. And
at one point, I sieged you with a single scout.
Yeah, I figured that much. So, I mean, my biggest thing was I knew I was going down, and I was like, this is the most forces I'm ever going to have. I was like, I can either just wait until he kind of comes to the castle walls and we'll call it quits, or I was like, I can go out and meet him. And funny enough, I mean, the whole entire point of me breaking the siege was not so much because I was like, oh, I probably have the upper hand. It was literally just a role-playing factor of me being like, you know, I'm undead and I'm not going to die cowering behind these walls. I'm going to go meet him out in the fields. And so I sat down and I don't know if you saw that episode. I'm sure you've watched it. I really put a lot of thought into the placement of my units, who was going to be casting spells, where the mages were going to be. Not that had a huge effect because you didn't have your full force there anyways, but I wanted to make sure that if I was going to go out there and, this was going to be the end of the game for me, I wanted to at least go out in some really climactic way.
Well, it still would have been a pretty bad battle for me, even if I'd had all my troops there, because it was still, I think, the majority of my troops were there, and it wasn't the majority of my commanders. So who knows if I'd had enough enough banishment spam, maybe it would have turned out differently. That'll be a good question though for some of the more experienced players who might watch this, and I just don't know. But it was still a big force that you beat. That was my biggest single army on the map. So
yeah, I mean,
annihilating that army certainly was kind of one of the two punches that took me out of the game, I think.
I mean, one of the interesting things to quickly bring up is that I actually did have a little bit of counter against the banish, which I think helped. Because I had my prophet there, because I had everybody there, including my prophet and my pretender and everything. So I was able to cast, I believe it is a Blessing of the Sepulchre, which basically allowed, pretty much blessed my whole army, and it really helped against making it so banishes weren't always effective. And on top of that, though, it looked like you were going to win at first, because I placed all of my main skeleton units up in the front, my legionnaires and such, because I was like, well, I'm gonna put a lot of cannon fodder in the front, and your cavalry just crushed through them. But the real MVP ended up being when you hit the wall of lictors that I had been summoning for a long time. And then for my pretender to come in there with lictors and then the chill, and then your morale started dropping. And that's when I started seeing a lot of your forces being cut down.
My goal to take you out actually was, and this is part of why I actually moved my priests out, is I realized that my level 1 priests were not going to make any dent on your Dominion, but I actually was thinking it would be quicker to Dom kill you. And
actually, that's a question I was going to ask you guys, is what if the Dominion had been a lot lower, would that have changed the battle?
Well,
I think it'll
always be a mystery.
I think I could say that I did pick for my pretender an extremely high dominions, and that had a really large effect. And I intentionally did that because I know that
he could stay in his and just keep summoning undead units. And even though as defense they only contribute 1/10 of their strength, when you get 1,000 of them stacked up, it's kind of like Dominion killing is about the only thing I got. And I was moving my pretender down there too. From the north through the Throne of Water province, and me and Tortuga had a kerfuffle about the Green Sea or whatever it was. I think it was Province 16. And but you broke my siege before I could get down there, and then I was just like, okay, I'm turning right around. And that's also when I made peace with you.
Yeah, that was the interesting thing. As soon as I broke that siege, I got an email almost instantly that was like, hey, we don't really have to do this anymore. Why don't we declare a truce, And that was pretty much the end of that.
I don't want to play this stupid game anymore.
And I think I had a chuckle on it because I was like, oh, he's like wiping all my provinces out, and he's like, I'm going to remove you from the game. And then all of a sudden I beat that main force, and it was like, hey, just kidding. I'm going to back my armies up. You can have some of your provinces back. I didn't mean it. Sorry. And that was kind of where it ended.
The pale ones sent a little note of congratulations over to.
Actually, yeah, that's something interesting to note. Is that I guess there was a lot of people watching, because I got a lot of emails from people being like, "Hey, I had scouts there, just saw your battle." I think I got emails from 3 of you, if not 4. Basically, yeah, I know Dwarf Comet sent me one, and Tortuga, I know you sent me one, and then yeah, Marcus, you sent me one.
Yeah, I had a scout on your province from as soon as I could get one across there. So I don't think I sent you a.
You didn't send me a message, but then I'm pretty sure everybody watched that battle take place, because people wanted to see, they wanted to see me fall and get knocked out of the game, and it was definitely going to happen. And it was interesting when that didn't happen. And then once Vanaheim backed off and Agarthan and me had already kind of called a truce, and I was allies with Dwarf Comet, the only person I was bordering at that point was Tortuga, and me and him actually didn't even really communicate much near the beginning of the game. So
and for me to make peace with you, I had to, because at that point, you'd weakened me significantly. You were already in a very weak position, and I was just like, I'm fighting Ermor to my own defeat, because Agartha was who I was really worried about at that point. I mean, my whole purpose for trying to take you out was to keep your capital out of Agartha's hands. So yeah, that's why I was just like, no, I got to make peace with Ermor.
Also, one of the things with all the lands, I guess, because of the High Dominion from Ermor, they're all useless lands anyway, weren't they? Really, by that stage.
I could have handled them simply because the Pale One troops don't need to eat, but my human troops couldn't have. But I could have at least set up Pale One armies.
Yep.
Yeah,
all right.
And that was where I was playing the diplomatic game by just saying, like, well, I got to Ermor first, and that's why I'm going to not let Marcus attack Ermor.
Right, the next thing that we have on our list is the grudge match of all grudge matches, Agartha versus.
Nice.
We've discussed it a little bit. It all started with Might Marsh, and then it just went crazy from there, didn't it? It just became you two slugging it out.
Yeah, it was just mistake after mistake on my part. First, again, taking Might Marsh, thinking it would be easy, trying to get some extra income, which turned into a real thing. Then the Brass Throne, expecting that the fort was going to get built, but then it didn't, and I lost all the money for that. I made some very poor choices during that stretch of the game, and I suffered for it. Now, had I made good choices, I could have, hopefully my goal would have been to soak up some of these lands to help me against Vanaheim, but it didn't work out like that.
Yeah, I mean, diplomatically, me and Agartha were quite poor up until Might Marsh happened, and as soon as there was this huge army on my capital's borders, I was like, this has to go. So for me, that was like, right, I have to do something about Agartha, and everyone, there was so much diplomacy around this, tried to like, oh no, don't attack, concern how it would look like, and all this diplomacy was going on, but my mind was made up. I had to do something about Agartha when that happened.
Because at that stage, neither one of you would turn back from war, which was quite funny. Because as you say, diplomatically, we're all trying to stop you from both and to focus on Vanaheim.
Yeah, Daz and I were like
I was willing to turn back. I remember telling both Daz and Tortuga, I was saying, look, if you can get Ulm to attack Vanaheim, or at least no, you were offering that. You were saying, hey, what if we talk Ulm into attacking Vanaheim? Then I was like, all right, fine. Then I'll move my armies away. But it didn't work out like that. Because then literally the next turn is when he attacked Might Marsh. And so then I was like, all right, Daz and Tortuga, you guys are acting in bad faith.
That's right. I remember that now that you remind me, because that was quite funny, because Tortuga and I don't know about Tortuga's side, but from my side, when that attack went through and it all went to shit at that stage.
Oh, gosh.
It was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
It was so close to negotiating something meaningful.
Yeah, I felt like I had two toddlers on each side who were swinging at each other, and you're like, no, you stay in your corner, Jimmy, and then Timmy would sneak a punch in with my marshmallow, and then okay, Timmy, back to your corner, and then you just couldn't keep them apart. It was doomed from the beginning.
That was such a frustrating time for everyone, I think.
My big problem was I just needed Agartha and Vanaheim to fight each other. And diplomatically, it was too difficult to work with Agartha versus Vanaheim. But I couldn't work with Vanaheim against Agartha, because if I worked with Vanaheim against Agartha, then Vanaheim would win the game. And I wasn't ready for that yet. So it's kind of, I just needed to fight each other, and I just couldn't work it out.
You went into Might Marsh right at the. If you had waited one more turn, I think we could have negotiated something. But
well, I want to say one thing though. I have a different perspective of Ulm's position at that point than Ulm has. I do think that Battle Moose's theory there is based on an overestimation of my own strength at that point in the game. I honestly think if you'd come in and taken Agartha on with me, you would have been surprised how much you probably could have gotten out of that. Because I was on the opposite end, very worried that I might be making a deal with the devil, allying with. Because I said that at one point in one of my videos that I was like a little bit worried that Ulm might actually end up with the upper hand after a battle, after an alliance with me against Agartha. So, yeah, I think if you'd gone after Agartha, the game might have turned out differently. That's my opinion. If you'd taken Bithin or some of those provinces with that huge army you had, or with that army you just kept building up, I'm not sure I could have. I'm not sure I could have done anything to stop you.
Not my main army, but you could have raided me something awful.
Yeah, no, it would have been interesting, but I don't think it was set in stone. I think it would have been
right. I think you're right. So that was certainly a viable option. There was opportunity there.
Yeah, and I just don't think. I mean, I understand what you're. I think in hindsight, at least from my perspective, I was definitely worried that if Agartha came after me, you could have marched into Agarthan lands while I kind of suffered their wrath, and I would have ended up instead of with Agartha being my neighbor, just with you being my neighbor.
It's quite funny because you guys are like I didn't see Ulm as a threat. I saw Ulm and myself being about the same sort of level. I saw us as sort of like really very much second or tertiary tier forces, and it was really only when this fight sort of started that the might of Ulm really became quite prevalent.
Yeah.
Were you guys worried about him beforehand, or?
I was just feeling that I would rather have to deal with Ulm than Agartha in the end game. But I think I also underestimated Ulm once he got the iron darts too. So
my biggest issue was I slowly built this army over basically the whole game. Really was careful with it, and I couldn't replace losses very well at all. So I was very loath to go into any big battle without huge advantage, because if I lost that army, I had nothing left really. All I had was that army.
And I think that's where
Smiths.
And I think that's where really, if you and I had gone up against Marcus, whoever was going to come out on top of that allied, division of land, would have been really determined by Marcus, and how he chose to prosecute his war against the both of us.
I think after Might Marsh, it would have been Battle Moose that would have been on the losing end of, on the negative end of Marcus's ire at that stage.
Yeah, but it depends. I mean, like I was worried that Marcus was siege my fortress over there in '96, and if he took that, or if he went into the water, like once he got into that water, there was no way we were going to get him out. So, yeah, it would have been interesting.
Yeah. I mean, that was my goal during the war, to get into the water. And if you'll remember, I didn't do it through your fortress, but I did it through the north.
Oh, the north. And
yeah. I wouldn't have wasted the time sieging your fortress. Like my goal was just to take as much territory as possible as fast as I could. So I avoided fortresses in general. In fact, I don't think I ever besieged with the intent to capture anything in the entire game. At the end there, I besieged Ulm just to stop his production. But I was never going to storm it. Again, I was just playing really defensively because I lost that army at the Brass Throne, and had that army survived, had the walls been built, I would have sent another army down, and I would have been willing to engage against Battle Moose. But at that point, I mean, luckily my prophet Birdie Bot survived pretty much by herself. She was able to escape, but everybody else fell.
Yeah. So I guess we'll just move on next to the next thing, which was the big move of the game. Really, was Vanaheim's attempt at the thrones.
Yeah, so I can explain how that came about. Was when Ulm didn't show up to the war, it hung me out to dry against Agarthan.
Very long. You made it through, so it's very inconvenient for me.
Well, I actually was a few turns too late. Like, I wish I'd actually started making that move a little. Waiting on Marcus, and yeah, when I finally got to the point, and Marcus offered me the truce, and I was like, well, you know what? Screw Ulm. If he's not going to help fight, then I'm just going to do my own thing here and try to win the game. And I just felt like, too, at the same time as that was happening, I was watching Shinuyama just become dominant in the game. And I felt like, oh, God, I mean, Shinuyama owns the game now. And I just saw, I did the calculation off camera, and I was like, well, I can probably go in if I send everybody in to the Throne of Splendor, and you know, and Daz hasn't built that castle in that province like I asked him not to, and I thought if I can get the winged carpet or wing boots and stuff, I was like, I have to get it though before anybody can react, because I don't have the military to hold on to anything, so I was trying to get Marcus to stay going through your territory, and then I tried to keep Marcus, and that was a mistake, I think, actually. I tried to get Marcus to come back up through my sea provinces during our ceasefire, and I kind of wish I'd tried to ask him, although I don't know if Marcus would have done it. I kind of wish I'd asked him to stay in your territory to keep your army down there, because as we saw, that one turn would have made a difference at the Throne of Splendor. But in the end, though, it didn't matter, because Tortuga was able to kick me out in the Throne of the Second Age, and I don't know what I could have done. In hindsight, I felt like it was going to have to be a big gamble, or I was going to lose the game either way.
Yeah. Did you ever think about, did you have plans for building a castle in the second Throne of the Second Age?
I couldn't.
Oh, really?
I even raved about that on camera, too, because then Shinuyama builds. That's not fair. Like, how come he can build water fortresses and I can't? So,
okay, because I just thought I would. We were sort of, when we were trying to plan, because at the end it was really just Ulm, Shinuyama and Man that were trying to figure out the best way of stopping you at that stage. And Ulm and I were arguing which one of us would send an army into the Throne of Splendor. I'm glad that Ulm ended up sort of taking the lead on that one, because it allowed me to then sort of save my army. We were both going to send both of our armies in together, and he would have actually defeated yours, and then mine would have been lost to his as well, I think. So yeah, that was interesting. But
well, that's funny, because I made a deal with all of you guys, except I think Ulm, because I just knew I knew he was going to attack me no matter what. I mean, I saw, you know, protection from lightning. Who's that for, I wonder. But you know, I sent you that message saying, like, just don't attack me. I'll give you back your throne. I just need it for 2 months. And I said the same thing to Sabouts. I was like, you know, you don't need to attack me. You're just gonna provoke me. And if you don't provoke me, then I'll be your friend and I'll help you win the game if I lose. And so I thought you were just being nice to me and finally being like my ally, because I had to look at it as like, well, at this point, guys are going to kingmake either me or Tortuga. So I was doing my best to be nice as possible. Like, I kept paying you back I paid you guys the money that you were losing for your provinces.
I thought that was so strange and cute. It's like, yes, I'm marching through your lands without permission, and I'm giving you gold for it. It's like, like sure, but I'm still at war with you.
And by that stage, for payment for me not getting Asphodel's throne, like, we'd actually arranged that I was going to get all of your territory. So that's why I didn't really want to lose that army.
You know,
so I was marching.
I do have a very question that's been burning in my brain for a while, and you didn't really cover it in your videos. I think you might have edited it out. But from what I could tell, your initial plan was going to go for the Throne of Splendor and Brass, and that would have given you the points that you needed.
Yes.
But
you built a castle too quickly.
Yes.
One turn too quickly.
I was always wondering the whole game through, like, how much that impacted the game.
It might have helped in that I probably could have destroyed a portion of your mage corpse, and your mage corpse is what just wrecked me at the Throne of Splendor. So yeah, I was just always one turn behind on where I needed to be. If I could have had just one turn extra again with your army being too slow, or if I had been one turn early to take out the Throne of Brass from you, I could have done it. I could have done it. It was close, but one turn makes a big difference.
Yeah, we had a countdown going about 3 turns out. I think we were sort of trying to figure out where we could get armies to counteract you before you'd actually declared that you were going for it. So we were trying to keep sort of forces around enough to sort of stymie you. It was interesting.
Interesting enough to note at this point, I had, as Marcus put it, I was having a mini renaissance all by myself. Up in my little nation, as everybody was duking it out with Vanaheim, everybody had forgotten about poor Aramor. I was pretty much non-relevant in that portion in the middle of the game, and I was just building up this unbelievably ridiculous-sized army. And I think that Tortuga saw that, because he ended up shooting me a message, and he was basically like, "Hey, Vanaheim is gunning for the game right now. He's going to try to win it, and you've got to push for the Throne of Fortune." And so I actually started taking my unbelievably ridiculous sized army and pushing it down that way. And I do regret this, and if I could go back, of course, I would change it, as I'm sure anybody would when they have the hindsight. But Vanaheim actually did talk me out of attacking him.
It was a good move on your part.
Yeah, well,
no, we really were
about.
I found this really funny as well. I really did. I don't know if this is the right time to talk about it, but the whole interplay between Aramor and Vanaheim was just a source of utmost confusion to me.
I mean, there was sort of this, I moved down there and I was getting ready to make some really big power moves, and then I got mixed communications from people based off of Vanaheim's position, and then right about the time when I took a few of Vanaheim's provinces, and right about the time I was getting ready to make another power move, Vanaheim shoots me a message and he goes, "Wait, no, Tortuga's about to win the game." And I'm like, "Wait, what?" And so I had, as you guys might have known if you watched my videos, I had absolutely no scouts. I was pretty much flying dark the whole time, and my scouts kept getting captured and destroyed. So I was totally 100% relying on everybody else's information, which of course could have been truthful or not truthful. And I believed Tortuga when he told me Vanaheim was making a gun for the game, and I assumed that because off of the little information I could pick up that's what it looked like. And then I got, I believe, a message from Agarthan, because I talked to you a little bit about it, Marcus, and talking to you as well, Vanaheim. And then that's when I started to get the impression that no, now Tortuga's trying to make a jump for it, and Vanaheim has pretty much been beaten back. And so then that's when I looked at how many turns were left in the game, and I was like, well, if it is true and Vanaheim really isn't going to make a push. Vanaheim kept sending me these really empty threats. Essentially, he would say things like, "Don't you take another province, I'm gonna do it." And then I would take one, and he'd be like, "If you take one more, I'm really gonna come up there with this army. I'm really gonna mess you up." And I was like, all right, I'm not sure if he has an army or not. I take another one, and he'd be like, "Oh, I'm coming up there now. That's it. It's over. I'm coming up." And nothing ever happened. The entire rest of the game, there was never a single army from Vanaheim that came up there. But by that point, when I all of a sudden came to the conclusion, I was like, I'm pretty sure Vanaheim is honeypotting me. I don't think he actually has a real army. That was the same exact time that Vanaheim messaged me and he said, "Okay, here's the real deal. Tortuga's going for the victory." And we had maybe 9 turns left, and I completely took my army. I counted out how many turns I had to get to Asphodel's old throne. I believe it was the Throne of Winter. And I was like, all right, that's it. I'm shifting gears and I'm going towards Tortuga. And that's where I combined every single one of my forces together I had. And I was like, even if Tortuga comes after my capital, I'm pretty confident that one skeleton there can hold it long enough before the game ends that I could just take my forces and I could just drive it straight into Tortuga's heart. And I know that Tortuga will have the most thrones and he will essentially have won the game by standards, but I will hurt him mentally. I will hurt his emotional. I will destroy his spirit. That's what I want to do.
I just want to say too, I accidentally misunderstood some of Tortuga's units, thinking they were level 3 priests when they weren't, because they had that radiates with power tag, and I mistakenly told you guys that I thought Tortuga was sitting on all these thrones with level 3 priests just to go, surprise! I get them all this turn.
Oh, so you were legitimate about that?
I thought for sure that was a bluff.
Yeah, I did too.
I was like, what is he telling these people? I don't have this garbage. I only have like 4 points.
No, it's funny. Actually, we run ahead of ourselves a little bit. After the attempt for Vanaheim, then we had sort of like a bit of a deal between a fair few of us for dividing up Vanaheim's lands. And so Ermor's spoken a little bit about the division of the lands, which he was supposed to take the Throne of Fortune, and I think that Ermor was going to get everything on the northern end of the above the water. I was going to get all of the land that was Vanaheim's down to this castle, I think, and Shinuyama was going to grab the rest. Actually, and I think that Ulm also had. Actually, I think we left it. With Tortuga, you may have a better recollection. I think we were going to leave Ulm and Ermor to fight out if Agarthan wasn't sort of fighting with them anyway. Leave Ulm and Ermor to sort of fight over the swamplands.
Okay, if you give me a second, I can actually pull it up. I don't know if you're able to see my screen share.
I think I was a little bit better about this because I did all the heavy lifting against Vanaheim, and then you guys get all of his provinces.
Yeah. Yes, I got to agree. Because I just walked straight through to his castle, and I thought I was doing really well.
I mean, I heard a lot about it. Really,
I warned you, Daz.
You did. I thought, oh, this is pretty good.
I mean,
I put up the map. Yeah, it looks like you were not supposed to go that far. You were only supposed to take up to Vanaheim's capital.
Oh, was I?
Yeah, it looks like according to this.
That would have been another. Was it going to be Ulm next to me on 84, or was it going to be you on 84?
I got a tag between yours and mine. Hold on. Okay, so 84 is Ulm, and even 77 was Ulm, and 74 was Ulm.
Oh, okay.
I was very generous with the distribution.
Well, that's because you took Asphodel.
You're generous when you got all the thrones of Ascension.
If I recall correctly, there was like 19 lands I was trying to give to Man, 2 to Airmore, and then it was like 10 to Ulm, which probably isn't fair to Ulm, you're right? But and then I took like 8 myself. But that was at least the potential distribution. It didn't work out anything like that, as we know.
No.
As we know,
but we all knew that it wasn't going to end up like this way.
Well, I mean, at this point, there was like 2 turns left in the game.
No, this was
very early.
Yeah, this is pretty early.
Ascension turn, maybe? Turn 38?
Yeah,
even
turn
before
36. It says right here, turn 36. This is
turn 36.
36.
Don't feel bad, Marcus. They didn't invite me to this discussion either.
Vanaheim, how would you like your lands distributed?
And from Marcus's perspective, Marcus was trying so hard to get us to fight against him at that stage as well. I think that was around about the same time. So it was sort of, we were still hoping, I think, at that point that Agarthan would fight against Vanaheim. But yeah, no, it's sort of funny. I mean, we're flicking back for the viewers. We're sort of going back and forwards in time a little bit, but yeah, sort of eventually we end up at towards the end of the game. So so the division of Vanaheim, I was really relying on that once again, but I knew at that stage the end game had already sort of had entered at the the game itself. So then we have the rise of Shinuyama.
Nobody's excited about that.
No, let's just skip over that one.
We're going to finish up here pretty soon.
Okay, so
I will say that at the point that I realized that Shinuyama was the real threat, I started being kind of an ally to Vanaheim. I wouldn't attack Shinuyama because, again, it would have gone against my word, and I wouldn't do that. But I was hoping for Vanaheim to win. I was like trying to provide whatever assistance I could so that he could get the Throne of Splendor.
Yeah, I noticed this. I also noticed Sabouts. This happened with Airmore as well. And for you, Marcus, it was very confusing because I had honored every agreement we had. We had agreements and neither of us broke them. And this was right on the tail of Vanaheim basically attacking you, stabbing you in the back, and I was so confused that suddenly you guys were so chummy. But I didn't play. What was that game you guys played together? So that's probably my fault.
Well, I mean, again, I didn't attack you. I didn't do anything materially to stop you. My goal was Ulm.
But you wanted a guy who just stabbed you in the back to win, which
I didn't stab Marcus in the back. If that's what you're saying. Our peace treaty expired.
Okay, but I don't think that you said I'm going to declare war on you in 2 turns or something, right? You just
but that was the implicit terms of that peace treaty.
The animosity between Wade and I got a little out of control, and it was just stupid. And so I just personally let it all go.
Well, and our animosity was just basically like we just couldn't work out a peace treaty. So I mean, it was kind of like a Middle East.
Wayne dropped out there.
Down to attack.
That was a good way to end it.
And Tortuga.
Yeah, go ahead, Marcus.
Okay, Tortuga. So also, I was holding a grudge against you and Daz.
From my perspective, I'm sorry, I might have cut out there for a sec. From my perspective, hang on, I'll let you guys talk while I cut out.
You're okay now, actually.
Oh, okay. From my perspective, once that peace treaty expired, we would go back to, and it was just in my best interest to attack you immediately when that peace treaty went out. So I didn't think of it as so much as a betrayal, as much as like, well, if we're not at peace, we got to be at war.
And what were you saying, Marcus?
I was just saying that at that point in the game, I was more mad at you and Daz for essentially leaving me to dry than I was at Vanaheim for attacking me, because I figured at least he attacked me in like good faith. Like he was being hostile, he attacked, then we had a peace treaty, whereas you guys were like trying to play me against him, and you wouldn't actually help me with anything. So I was like, screw these guys.
Yeah, which is how I felt about Ulm.
Hey. Because we were surprised also that that you wouldn't help us in the defence to stop him, but at that stage as well. So we thought, oh, there's a deal that's been done that we don't know about.
Kind of.
There was no deal. It was just you didn't come to me when I needed you, so why should I come to you when you need me?
Oh.
He was going for the win, though. I think that trumps everything else. But anyway.
Yeah, but again, it was king making too, though. It was like, if he stopped me, like I told Marcus, and this might have affected his decision. If I don't win this game now, like Tortuga. Well, I didn't say that part. I didn't say the first part, but I definitely emphasized the second part, which is that if something doesn't happen, Tortuga is going to win the game. It's
really so interesting for me to see how Wadestar was, by far, despite the fact that I thought I was one of the most vocal diplomatic people messaging, I am now starting to realize Wadestar was the most manipulative this game. It's just crazy. You really had your hands on everyone at some point.
I think attempting to be manipulative, though, in one sense.
Yeah, right.
I don't think anyone really sort of believed that he was going to honour those agreements.
I honoured every agreement I made.
That's not true. You didn't help me win the game.
So the rise of Shinuyama.
I even made good on my word to you, Sebas. I destroyed.
She's cut out there.
Ifisabor, because my thinking was that if you take that province, I want you to take that throne as quickly as possible, so you'll move Tortuga.
That's not the reasoning you used in your videos.
What did I say in my video?
In your video, you said, "I'm not going to let Sebas take this throne, so I'm going to delete it so I can take it back."
Oh, not take the fortress. Right. That's the second part of that too. Is it was the fortress I didn't throne, and he kept the fortress. Then I was never going to get the throne back. That's certainly true.
Right.
Yeah. And I think by that stage, really, we knew that Shinuyama was the one that we had to then sort of stop. And at that stage, I tried to make friends with, like when Vanaheim actually got me away from his province and then started rampaging through my territories. It was, for me, by that stage, I was willing to negotiate to go against Shinuyama. But then by that stage, Vanaheim didn't want to.
I wanted to. You wouldn't stop.
No, that was before. But after you took back your home province and destroyed my army, Like I had nothing at that stage, and I assumed that you would have gone after the Throne of Water. I think it's the Throne of Water that's in the mountains. And
no, that was the lower throne.
Or the second age.
Something like
maybe
that.
it's these two.
The Throne of Water is over in number 2, or over in the swamp.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. 106. Yeah. Yeah.
That's the Throne of Water. The lower throne is the one in the mountains.
Yeah, I never knew which one it was. So, yeah, so I sort of was thinking, okay, well, he'll let me go. But by that stage, I knew that I couldn't win. So I was just going to play a spoiler and just try to protect the Throne of Splendor and the Throne of Law. So I was pretty much out of the game at that stage. And but yeah, I would have tried to have got equality, I think, or equity anyway, because you killed both my Pretender and my Prophet in that attack on Vanaheim.
Yeah, that was satisfying, but in its way. But I really would have preferred that you'd gone away and attacked Shinuyama with that big army.
At that stage, it was still, you could still have made a tilt for the win.
Oh, dude, I think I was pretty much out.
Yeah, but you have to realize, Star, everyone thinks that everyone else is much more powerful, and everyone thinks that they are much weaker.
I take your point completely. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. And so we then come back to, we've already spoken a little bit about the rise of Ermor from the ashes, but this one is more about just how Ermor got those massive armies. I've never seen an army that big in
It's
Dominion.
that nation.
Yeah, I mean,
so is that standard?
Not always. I had tons of pre-summoning units, and I think I ended up going for the Black Laurels, and I was doing maybe 10 to 15 lictors a turn. So I really, that's the one thing I focused on, is at the point where everybody basically was like, okay, Ermor's out of the game, and I was like, all right, everybody's ignoring me now. I just built tall, essentially. I started putting all my priests on summoning units, and I put all my mages on summoning units, and I barely even focused on research, because all I wanted to do was just build up a huge army. I wanted to make a big comeback, but obviously the 50 turn limit wasn't going to allow something like that. So at the end of the day, that's why I decided, I'm going to take all my forces, pile them into this just massive Death Star, and I'm going to That's No Moon Tortuga. That was pretty much my last last dying wish.
You also missed a few turns too.
I did, yeah. I ended up missing 2 turns just due to life things, and that did hurt me a lot. In fact, that set me back. There was an instance where I was going to attack the Throne of Fortune with that army, and I didn't do it because that was a turn I missed. And then that next turn, that's when I decided, okay, now I don't have the time to take the Throne of Fortune and move towards Tortuga. And since I had come to the conclusion that Vanaheim was not going to win the game, but Tortuga potentially was, that's when I decided, I was like, okay, I've got to start making a move towards Tortuga, because at this point, I would rather the game end at more of a stalemate. And even if Tortuga has most of the thrones, I would be damned if I saw a Tortuga victory. So
Wadestar has to go fairly soon. Actually, I'm just sort of seeing there. He's happy for us to continue on after him, but I guess we should just we're talking about the final battles, and really they were the big ones, the big battles, particularly with Ermor and Shinuyama. Like that was the first time that Shinuyama also got a blood nose. What are the big ones? What are the big battles were there? There was the big ones between Agarthan and Ulm as well. You had battles going in each of your own home provinces, didn't you?
I just want to say one thing. Right near the end of the game, I only uploaded the video yesterday. Me and Agartha had a fairly big battle on turn 49. We were just basically thinking, we have these armies, let's have a big battle. So we did that. I don't suppose most of you guys have seen that yet, but
I saw it.
Again, it was just bad timing and mistakes on my part. So my intention, because originally Ulm was like, hey, let's have a brawl at the Throne of Splendor. So I was like, all right, fine. So I moved my army, I think it was to this province right here on my screen. It's yeah, there we go, 118. And so I was trying to be a little sneaky. So what I was gonna do first thing was I was gonna send just 2 mages with a little teeny bit of a guard, and then I was gonna earthquake the hell out of them to try to take as many of his priests as possible away, his Forge Smiths priests.
Yeah,
the Iron Blizzard guys.
That was something that you should definitely do.
But
that was the right strategy.
So I did that. But what happened was that exact same turn, Battle Moose moved his whole army from 114 into 118, which I was not expecting. I was expecting him to wait for me to attack. So he caught me kind of with my pants down. And my guys did Earthquake a couple times, but they weren't really, most of them weren't scripted for it. And my whole entire army was there. So I Earthquaked my entire people. Which is a frustration.
Oh my god! This is the first time I heard.
Didn't you, Marcus?
It was terrible. Now, granted, Agarthans have higher hit points than humans, so it didn't kill anybody. But it was just bad moves all around. Like I was originally going to have 2 people. They were going to be Earthquaking like 4 times, I think, between them. And instead, I got 1 guy, I think, Earthquake maybe twice. Yeah. And I obviously lost the battle.
Yeah, 3 or 4 Earthquakes would have killed all my mages, I think.
But they didn't. That's the one thing that really pissed me off, was that when it actually did go off, most of your guys just kind of shrugged it off. And so then at that point, I was like, damn, there is nothing that can stop Masked Iron Blizzard. Because Earthquake was my only wild card. Like, I can't think of any other spell except for, like, Master and Slave at the way he ended the game.
I'm not understanding this. I just want to are you saying basically that Ulm is overpowered? Is that the comment here? Or against Agartha is overpowered? I'm not understanding.
I'm saying at this point in the game, for where I was in the game, there was literally nothing I could do to stop those Iron Blizzards. Like, Earthquake was my gambit. That was my end game gambit. I was going to send a mage sacrificially to cast Earthquake twice, like 2 mages, so it was 4 total casts.
I get it.
And my hope was that would knock out all of his priests, and obviously it didn't work out that way. But even if it had, seeing how his troops and mages reacted to the Earthquakes that I did cast, and how very few of them actually even got hurt, I don't even think it would have made a difference had my plan worked out the way I intended, and had I been able to surprise attack him.
We're getting some comments in the live chat, and what they're saying is that we need about 6 Earthquakes would have done the trick, I think, is what the comments are.
Actually, I'm seeing that in I've just turned on my comments now, but I can see it. There's been a lot of comments, actually, which I've missed, so I apologise to the viewers about that one. But yeah, someone's saying 6+.
And those Earthquakes, it just wasn't enough.
But I was really trying there at the end to kind of pass out the Earth Gems that I did have, and I did have kind of a not enough Earth Gems. So I knew it took 3 of them, I think, to cast the spell, and another 1 just to keep my mages from falling over exhausted after casting it the first time, and it just didn't work out the way I had intended.
Did you see how many Earth Gems I ended up with, Marcus?
No.
I had hundreds.
Oh my god.
I probably not 100. I probably had close to 100 at the end before I started to use them.
I could have made more Clockwork Horrors.
You know, I ended up cashing them all back in so I could get more nature gems. I had heaps and heaps.
I might have played the game a bit differently had I had more Earth Gems. You definitely would have seen more Sentinels, because I was really excited about their regeneration ability and their high hit points. But again, I just couldn't summon a lot of them.
Yeah, I guess just sort of going on into, I know that Wade Start's got to go fairly soon, but the last point that we're going to discuss was the best units and spells, and I guess we're sort of talking about that now, really, with the Iron Blizzard.
Iron Blizzard.
Yeah, the Ulm's Iron Blizzard, Tortuga's Thugs, Vanaheim's Raiders. Is there anything else in that sort of group that we need to?
I had
Fafnir.
I had that. It had my Lictors, which ended up winning both the battle between me and Vanaheim when we had that big where I broke the siege, and then at the end the huge final battle of thousands of undead units against Tortuga's last bastion of hope.
Fafnir's best unit.
Yeah. Fafnir was incredible. Yeah, that was amazing. But just I guess in the with the normal units that were sort of running around, I mean, Tortuga's Thugs with those what are they called? Those
the Shura?
Yeah, with the Frost Bands or the Fire Brands and Fine Shields.
So good.
That was incredible, actually, to see those, because often there were battles that would sort of start off with a single unit against quite a sizable force, and you think, oh, well, he's done. But just,
obviously, I can't take credit for this. It was I seen him before, and his compatriot Sam, who know the game well enough to tell me these little things.
Yeah, no, it's really impressive to see that. And Tortuga's thugs, Vanaheim's raiders, where he had those the glamour. That was incredible with the early expansion.
That was rough. That was really rough on me. I mentioned
in one of my videos that Vanaheim was being very cautious when he was raiding me. And if he had just put all of his vans together, he probably could have taken out one of my fortresses without too much effort.
I was being cautious. I was kind of missing some of my odds of getting caught by your armies. But I don't think I could have taken out your fortresses with... I would have had to have hung out too much.
Yeah, and you had to get away, didn't you? You had to make sure that you surprise attacked with that, with being able to fly in like that. Another question, actually, Vanaheim, which actually came up in my Patreons, wasn't a question, but it was a comment in one of the early videos, was that it looked like your approach to the game was to go for an early rush game. Was that true?
It wasn't necessarily. I was still I'm still learning the game. It was basically I wanted to do the Awake Pretender over again since I did so badly, and just emphasize on expanding as much as possible. And I didn't really know what to do yet, except that obviously the more you have, the quicker, the better off you are.
Yeah. Is there anyone else got any comments about this, or should we start to sort of wrap it up? There was one thing Tortuga had some graphs done, and I don't know if I can actually show them. I'm going to see if I can somehow do something on my screen. Just bear with me.
While you're doing that, the only thing I wanted to mention is that if anybody here hasn't gone and watched that battle between me and Tortuga, it was absolutely insane. I mean, the amount of units on the field, I don't think I've ever even seen a Dominions 4 game that went down like that. I mean, and Tortuga's army did extremely well. I mean, he killed hundreds of skeletons, but it was basically just at that point straight attrition. I mean, he just could not kill enough faster than they were closing in. So that's ultimately, it was like a sea of undead. I really would have been interested in seeing how it played out had that army been allowed to keep pursuing. And I don't know if anybody knows this, but in turn 50, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe I did actually end up taking the Throne of Winter.
Well, guys,
I think
if Tortuga can get that graph back up, let's take a look at it. But maybe we should spend a little bit of time just upcoming our next game a little bit, even though we don't have any.
Yep, actually, there is a comment just came up, actually, that we should be proverbs. I don't know how we got through this whole thing, because they were just incredible.
Very insightful.
They were brilliant, weren't they? Yeah, I can't get Tortuga's graphs, unfortunately, so I think we'll have to...
I think Tortuga's cut out.
Yeah, he's... no, he's just left, yeah. Okay, so he's just dropped out of this as well. So his internet has just stopped. He did send a message that was going to be going through. Yeah, so actually one of the comments here is really just saying that it was the best thing of the whole series. Actually, he's back now. I don't know if I can show. If you can get your graphs up, Tortuga, maybe we can just end up on those. And I don't know if I can actually show them. I've just tried to do a few things.
Yeah, I could try to put them on Imgur. Oh, but they're not up yet. That 1 sec.
If you or if you just want to put it back on your screen share, I'll just blow up the screen.
All right, there.
You had a combination one, didn't you, somewhere?
So this is I think the income one really tells a whole story, but this is the gems income that I tried to show.
Hang on a second. I can't share this just yet. I can't share this just yet. I'll just bear with me. I'll just get it so that the viewers can see this as well.
Sure.
Yeah, I can't share it at all. So just in case you happen to be watching my version, this is the point where you want to go and look at Tortuga's.
Oh, I'm not streaming right now. I switched everyone over to other people.
Oh.
So hopefully...
So is that Tortuga right at the top there?
Yeah, for gem income.
Has to be.
It's insane. I didn't realize it, but look how low I was. Okay, so there's only 4 nations on here because I didn't, Marcus, I wasn't able to get Agartha into this.
Don't worry, my income in both gold and gems was negligible.
You'd be surprised because I thought Man's was pretty low too, but
yeah, I can't bring it up. Sorry.
Okay, maybe I can just injure them, or I don't know.
Yeah, we can post them in the comments for the stream too, I think.
Yeah, okay. That sounds good.
Yeah, I mean, if you send me like a JPEG or something, I could actually have it overlaid on the video when I post it.
All right, I'm just gonna throw these onto Imgur real fast, and I'll share the album. But you'll have to give me like 20 seconds to do that.
Yeah, do that actually, because what I can do in the a web browser in Tabletop Simulator, so we can have a look at it. So if I can remember how to do this.
Oh, thanks, Daz. That's awesome.
Then hopefully this will work. Just put it in the middle of the map here somewhere.
That's a good spot for it.
Okay. I don't know if this will work, but try this link in the Discord chat.
Guys, I'm just going to cut out for a little bit. And if I can, if you guys are still online here, back real quick. But otherwise, I may be stepping out.
All right. Well, good. Thanks for participating. Actually, that's not going to quite do it. Hang on, I'll just try to delete this. We'll see how useless I am at doing this sort of stuff. Where did it finish off? Anti-fan. So it's after that. All right. Let's see how we go.
Oh yeah.
There we go. Oh, that's the first one.
Oh, so that was the distribution on turn 36. The way we were planning to distribute Vanaheim's territory.
Yep. Okay. And so just go to next post. That
Yep.
will get us there. Okay. Oops. Didn't do it.
That wasn't very generous at all.
I can link it individually. Maybe that'll help.
I'm just going to delete that.
I just love how we're looking at Google through Tabletop Simulator.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? And all the hands all over it too.
By the way, guys, it's not like an inferiority complex or anything, but how come my hand is so much smaller than your guys'
No, mine looks small on mine.
Oh. Yeah, it's just the way it
looks.
looks.
A great big blue hand, and Sabouts is a purple hand. So,
I'm sharing the gold individually, and then that should bring it up.
Okay, here we go. So that was the first one. Sorry, I've got this. I'll just zoom in and go across to here. Oh, I'm bring up the wrong things.
And that's the gems. Those two links.
Oh, there we go.
There we go.
Okay. Oops, hang on. Right, so what are we seeing here?
So this is I don't know how accurate this is because I don't know what the where the y-axis should be on the bottom. But the points on the right, I took everyone's end. There's little bubbles on the right side of the map, and those are the bubbles for everyone's turn 50 incomes.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And then I took the score graphs and I just made it match up with that, and then I put everyone's income as the same because I was just kind of hoping that everyone had more or less the same income, around 400 to start.
Yeah,
and
I think
what you're seeing is gray is Shinuyama, it's the highest one. Wow. And red is Vanaheim, green is Man, and blue is Ulm. So you can actually see when Ulm was invaded by Asphodel. That's why I asked if Asphodel's income went down to 0. I mean, if Ulm's income went down to 0 when his capital was besieged. So I think it went down to 0, Ulm.
Wow, that's interesting, isn't it?
It really tells the whole story. I love it.
It was rough times.
And you can see, like with mine as well, like just the difference in that early thing. I just could not get gold.
Yeah,
but
so this was really impressive.
Didn't have gold ever, and yet he still amassed that humongous army.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah, that's true.
Wow.
I lost very few units. I was growing that army very slowly, very consistently the whole game.
And I wish I had gotten Marcus's on here because he did send me his turn, but it was just a little bit too close to the start of the show.
Negligible. I don't remember exactly, but I was probably around 500 to 1,000.
Well, I mean, we can verify this. Unfortunately, like, if anybody remembers, like, Olm, do you remember in the middle of the game, like turn 27, being around 1,500 income? Does that make sense?
That's a lot.
Well, that was your peak, so I was just throwing that out as a number.
Maybe. I don't really.
Okay, so this doesn't look terribly inaccurate, but you know, take it with a grain of salt.
I mean, those 0 income turns I can confirm.
That's why I asked you that earlier.
Actually, let's turn it across to gem income now. So we'll just bear with me. Control V. Right. Oops. There we are. So that's gem income.
And this one is actually dominated by, surprisingly, Ulm and Vanaheim until like turn 33 or something. But you can see my income is actually the lowest for the longest amount of time.
That's interesting, yeah.
What changes it?
You know, the game, it works in a very simple manner. Income is usually inverse to gems because the places which give you gems usually provide the lowest income. So it's kind of a natural thing. The only question I have here is about Vanaheim. I don't know how they were getting so many gems and income.
That's true. Vanaheim did very well through this portion of the map, through the middle there.
Because they had the throne just to the southeast.
I'm surprised too.
The throne just to the southeast was providing him +5 blood slaves a turn, right?
Yes.
So that must have been very helpful. He got that very quick early on in the game.
And did you?
Yeah, I used those blood slaves a bit.
Did you end up with the research at all as well?
The individual research, I didn't know how to combine it, so I only have 4 images, which are just the end state of people's research, which still tells a story. But I don't know if you want to risk. I mean, I can post them individually, but the album wasn't working, right?
Not easily on this. I can click it again.
Let me just
try. Should we just go to next post and just see what actually happens? Yeah. Don't know what's going on there.
Here, I'll post them directly.
Oh, that's
okay.
nice.
I don't know whose is whose. Damn it.
So if put .ping on the end of it, we'll be able to look at it a little bit more easily, won't we?
I can do that. I'm just
interesting to see this.
Yeah, one sec. Okay, we'll start with you, man.
All right, I'll just, hang on. I'll just zoom back in and just have to go across. Oh, sorry about this. I'm getting the I've got Discord.
Oops,
zooming in and out as well.
That's not the right one link.
No. Oh, hang on. There is I can get it from there. No, it's too long.
I got it here. So that's your research.
All right, I'll copy that one in.
Actually, what I can do is just throw these all into one picture. Might be easier to see them. I mean, like more relatable if I can just put them onto.
We go front and back. Like we can put them all in and then just go from one to one.
Okay.
So as you load them in, I'll just paste them in to this particular system. In the end, I thought I was doing pretty well with research. I don't know whether I did or not compared to you guys.
I thought I was doing well until I saw Shinuyama's research.
Yeah. There's a clear victor, I think, and it was a research battle.
Okay, just
so that's Shinuyama's.
All right.
I don't have any overlays saying which these are. You just have to remember.
That's okay.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow. Turn 7 up. Conjuration 6 and 6. Actually, 3 6s.
3 6s and a 7. I thought I did really well getting a 6.
Did I get a 6? No.
All right. This is all.
Yeah, a huge part of my strategy was to get to Evo 6 for the Iron Blizzard.
As it should have been.
So
Yeah.
much to that.
Oh, hang on. Let's get the word Alm in front.
It's 1-6 in there.
1-6, yeah.
Vacation.
That was Iron Blizzard, was it? Evocation?
Yep.
Was that a level 6 spell, or was that before level 6?
The two spells that I think are getting quite confused here. There's Iron Darts, which is a level 3 spell, and Iron Blizzard.
Iron Blizzard is the really good one.
Yeah, Iron Blizzard is a big upgrade on Iron Darts.
Yeah, yeah.
So
And Vanaheim as well. I'll just bring that one in.
I only got Iron Blizzard the turn before turn 38 with that battle with Vanaheim.
Oh, okay.
So it was literally in the nick of time.
Blood magic. Wow. So really, the didn't focus too much on the research then.
Well, after I got evocation and the end game was coming up, I went ahead and went for magic advancements that I could grab. And with the Blood Slaves, I was like, well, let's grab the Storm Demons. They fly in a storm, which I'm using. So.
Oh, okay. Yep. All right. So there's the 4 that we have anyway. Marcus, do you know what yours was like?
No, but I was good enough in evocation to get Earthquake. Conjuration, I was good enough to get the I believe right at the end of the game I summoned one of the stone oracles, marble oracles, so whatever level of conjuration that is. I didn't do any blood, didn't do any thaumaturgy. I had enchantment just enough to get me, I forget, something was an enchantment that I needed. Maybe it was the Sentinels, and maybe the Magma Children was conjuration. I think that's what it was. I think enchantment was Sentinels. So,
oh, okay. Yep.
Definitely, I was probably similar to where you were. Definitely nowhere near Shinuyama.
Yeah, Shinuyama is just incredible, isn't it? Really, when you look at that, it's just
I really like research. This is how I play every game.
Yeah, well, I was going hell for leather with it too on mine, and I'm a lot where you guys are.
Well, he had more fortresses and more places to recruit mages, and then the gold to recruit them too. So it was a snowball.
Yeah, and it really is a snowball. Because that's how I dedicated. I didn't have any early wars after. I mean, the Asphodel thing. Even during the Asphodel thing, there was times when I just wouldn't recruit units so I could recruit more researchers.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's interesting.
I had a really interesting time as Airmore because I obviously have to summon my mages using death gems, and I know it's been brought up before by some of the viewers that were watching, and I had a really hard struggle trying to acquire death gems, so summoning was super difficult because every single turn it was like, do I summon a mage so I could keep doing research, or do I try to summon units to help me fight? So it was.
You mean those plus 25 death gems from your home province weren't enough?
You believe it or not, no. not when I think a Dusk Elder was like 10 death gems just for one of those, and then lictors were very expensive, and I was really pushing for lictors. I ended up pushing real hard on pretty much just I believe it was evocation was like the big one for me because I made a hard push for Lictorian Guard. I think it was Lictorian Guard. And then there was I actually put a lot of research into construction because I really wanted to get the Black Laurels and such. So that was how it was for me.
Well, guys, do you want to talk a little bit just for people who might not know what our tentative plans are for the next game?
Yeah, I think that sounds good. There we go. There's Agarthan on the move.
Subtly telling us something.
Yeah. Actually,
so we don't know yet for sure who's going to play, but I think all of us though we're in agreement. We don't want to really start before next year, right?
No. I think we should shoot for like the same time that we started this one because that seemed to work out really well.
I am going to refrain from being part of it, but I would recommend you guys wait till Dominions 5 comes out.
Oh, definitely we are. Yeah,
Yes.
that's the other thing some people are asking, and it's like Dominions 5 should be coming out in November, so we'll all have a chance to kind of see what's up with it and relearn our factions if we have to, I guess, and then we definitely ought to be playing in Dominions 5 by next year.
Yeah,
and maybe it'll have a few patches come out too, but
we definitely would be crazy not.
The plan actually is that the devs are sort of keen for us to use Dominions 5 for that as well. So yeah, so that will definitely be a Dominions 5 game.
Yeah, I actually found out that I sent an email to the developers talking to them, and that's when I found out that they were also in contact with pretty much all of you, which was really handy because I was like, oh, I'm going to send them a message and and tell them about our series. I figured they knew, but I figured I'd tell them about it, and there's a really big skeleton on the map. That's exactly what it should have been.
How do you do that?
It's just use the plus, just shift plus. So that's what I should have had that in there all the way through, shouldn't we?
Yeah, right.
The massive undead skeleton.
Yeah, I shot them an email, and then I found out that they had been in contact with you guys, so they're already pretty excited to see us do this in Dominions 5.
Yeah.
Oh wow, I haven't heard anything from them.
Yeah, me either.
Oh well.
But I'm still trying to figure out how I can get them to. The only thing I regret about our game is that we did have that 50-turn limit. Although I think we also kind of needed it for our own sanity's sake.
It definitely helped, but that was a question I got actually in the chat: was do we intend to touch that limit? Are we going to keep it, move it, get rid of it? I mean, what do you? I mean, I know that's something we all got to talk about probably more, but
yeah. Well, we're not going to
have to see.
Yeah,
I think we have to see what happens in Dominions 5 really before we can make a decision.
Yeah, I will say that I'm really hoping that Dominions 5 will have some cleaned up and more dynamic.
One other question that people were asking, actually, which we haven't really addressed, was just like I was absolutely exhausted by the end of this, and I think a couple of the rest of you were as well. I was just absolutely shattered by the end of it. Are you all in the same? Did you all feel the same at the end of it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was another reason why I puzzily to some of you guys supported Vanaheim, because I figured if he could get that throne and end it at turn 38, that we can all go home.
I've got to be perfectly honest. In my heart of hearts, I was hoping that he would have got it because I thought that would be a good time for us to end.
You know, interestingly enough, it's funny to hear that you guys all felt that way, because by the time like turn 35 came around, I was like pumped. I was like, oh yeah, I'm doing this. I felt very, because that's when I started having my renaissance and I was feeling very confident in the game. But by turn 45, I was pretty burnt out as well. That's when Tortuga messaged me and he's like, hey, let's fight each other. And I was like, okay. So that's what we did.
It really dragged on. I felt like, because this is the longest series I've ever done.
Me too.
8 months.
What did we start in February?
Yeah.
And it's now October. I guess we finished in September. Like, I've never done a series which has lasted like more than 3 months or something. And this was just something. And I have to say as well, the diplomacy, which this is like maybe something to what, to lend support to what Marcus was saying about restricting it somehow. Writing all those emails and like pulling up these stupid proverbs and, you know, getting all this formatted, and the creative energy that went into those was just exhausting. And I know that Das must have felt the same way doing those comics. You know, it's just, it's exhausting.
Drove me nuts. That was a day almost at different times. When the diplomacy was going, that was a full day of I couldn't work basically because I was putting a comic together. It just really gave me the shits in the end. Like, I'm so over it.
But hey, guys, remember this though. I think we can say that we have set a record for having the longest running series on YouTube, as well as probably the largest collaboration on YouTube.
Well, yeah, as both of them being as both of them being like conjoined, right? I mean, how many other series on YouTube consist of, you know, 7 YouTubers and goes on for 8 months consistently, you know, or 7 months or whatever.
Exactly. We dominated. Yeah. We dominated.
It was a great experience. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah,
it was very enjoyable. It's one of those sort of was just so exhausting. I'm still not really keen for the next one, but I was so exhausted at the end of it.
I think maybe for the next one, maybe have the map a little bit smaller or the wind condition a little bit more lenient. I think that might make things a lot more exciting, interesting, maybe quicker.
And again, I really hope that we get slightly more friendly, I don't know, slightly more time-friendly victory conditions in the next one, because we kind of had to put that artificial time limit on our game just to make sure that, hey, we got to remember we're going to play to win this game because it's going to end. Otherwise, I think we could have all been in a, balance of power for a long time, longer than we ended up being in.
I mean, I think interesting enough, the turn limit is kind of what caused everybody to start pushing out heavy, but I do think that actually at some point somebody would have snapped and things would have gotten real. We would have had like a world war going on or something,
Yeah, because it would have had to eventually, but yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it had to have gone somewhere eventually. I do think that, unfortunately, the whole middle game was a little bit more politics and a lot less wars, but that's okay because people found that really interesting. I mean, I had nobody complain that I know of. Most people thought that the diplomacy was the best part. So,
well, there's some people who, like I said earlier, feel the same way as Marcus, and I understand that thought like less talking, more fighting. So,
actually, there's a lot of comments coming through. So, being the longest running series, there's a few series that have been going for years. So we can't claim that.
I didn't.
Have finished.
That was
possibly playing the longest running Dominions 4 series.
Yeah, that'll do.
There we go.
All right.
So I guess we should sort of close up now, but does anyone want to flip the table? Shall I do this for those that are watching this one?
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, nice.
Flip the table.
Lag.
Oh, that's fantastic.
That's gone. It's gone.
It's over. Dead. Officially
Game over.
dead.
There's still pieces falling.
Raining
All right,
pieces.
we'll still be in touch, and we'll keep the viewers updated too about what our plans are with the next game and Dominions 5. But viewers can take a break as well, and not worried that they're going to miss any. You can go on vacation for 3 months and you won't miss anything.
There you go. Because God forbid if you miss one day, you're behind a lot. 7 videos, in fact.
Thanks, guys. That was a really good session.
Yeah, thank you,
great.
guys.
It was great talking to you guys, and we'll stay in touch. I'll talk to you guys later.
Yeah, and thanks to everyone else. I really enjoyed it.
Great. All right. See you guys.
See ya.
Adios.
Okay, see ya. Yeah,
Is it
stop recording there. Yep.
Okay, I was gonna.